host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. Actually, this Thursday, we're going to have the roundtable, so don't miss that. That'll be all of us, all the members of RBN. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. What's going on, fam? I think I have a little bit of let me close this out really quick, just to make sure that fixes the connection, because I froze for a second. I think I have too many windows open. Sorry, guys. Okay, now it's fixed. All right, cool. What's going on, guys? Happy Tuesday. So I think first and foremost, I'm going to give a shout out to people in the chat, but I do want to make you very much aware of something that happened today. And you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. Actually, yeah, no, I could go ahead and show people that now. Let me show people this really quick. So Thursday, I, like many others, was planning on covering the presidential debate. Thursday, live streaming it, just like I've done before. However, it was recently brought to my attention and some others, and I'm sharing this just in case other people have not seen this information. Apparently, we will not be allowed to stream the debate this time around. So I want to go ahead and bring this up here. Now, this is from Sagar from Breaking Points announced this. And I guess I got to give a shout out to Sagar here, because honestly, I wouldn't have known about this had it not been for this tweet. It was this tweet that kind of alerted myself and a lot of other people. Sagar and Jetty said, CNN has told Breaking Points it is not allowing independent media channels to stream their presidential debate despite granting permission to all other terrestrial news organizations. This is coming from Sagar and Jetty, a blatant protection racket to protect elite media. So this is the message from CNN. Hi, Sagar. The debate will be available on CNN's YouTube channel. We are not offering the feed for other YouTube channels. So I hate to break this to you guys, but I will not be able to cover the debate this Thursday. Apparently, CNN privately owns the debate. Imagine that. So it is privately owned, but it's free to the public. And they are only allowing certain other networks, which they're all mainstream media networks, to stream the debate. They are not allowing independent media to cover the debate this time around. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to cover the debate on Thursday. It's not just Breaking Points. It's all of us. It doesn't matter if you're on the right. It doesn't matter if you're on the left. They have blocked us out. I tried to see if we could stream this on Rumble or Rockfin, but after watching Tim Pool's show earlier today, Tim Pool explained it's not about the platform. It's the fact that they privately owned the debate. This is insane. So just wanted to go ahead and let you guys know that. I think Judge Joe Brown is here. Judge Joe Brown, whenever you're ready, if you just give me a thumbs up, I'll bring you in. All right, guys, my special guest tonight, you've seen him here before. Judge Joe Brown is back. Hello, Judge Brown. Welcome back.
Well, hello there. How are you? I see you're running into the stone wall of commercial television.
Unfortunately, we just found out today.
Well, they pay for it, so they own it if they choose to do so. And the other thing is unlike media in years or decades past, instead of trying to even go through the pretense of giving objective coverage, they make it no question, but they have a bias because their man is in it and they want the other guy to lose because they've got sociological agenda. That's that rainbow cult thing they're trying to push. So, yeah, it's understandable. I think Biden should be subjected to Trump turning quickly with the microphone. Can you name all of your cabinet? What's your wife's name?
Oh my gosh. So, Judge Joe Brown,
Your
one
dog's
question.
name, the one that bit all those Secret Service people and all the guests, 40 some people got bitten. Can you remember that guy's name? Oh, you can't do that either. Okay.
Well, speaking of Biden, I do have a question for you about Hunter Biden and Donald Trump. So, both of them facing legal issues. I don't think Hunter Biden or Donald Trump are going to go to jail.
Trump doesn't have any legal issues. What they did was so far out of line with the Constitution of the United States, so far out of line with New York and other laws. That's not going to stand up on appeal. There is no way in the devil that will go through. The 34 felony convictions are BS because, first off, the judge didn't even charge the jury with what the law was. You can't be convicted of paying hush money unless there's some underlying crime that's being hushed. And in spite of repeated requests by the defense for a specification of what the underlying crime was, the judge did not require that the state prove one, did not charge the jury with the necessary instruction that was part of their necessary findings, that there was some underlying crime that the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that hush money was paid. See, they worked out a deal with Stormy Daniels, which is obvious if you know how criminal justice works. And what that deal was is they wouldn't prosecute her for felony blackmail, because if you pay somebody hush money to keep them quiet and not ruin your reputation, either pecuniary, penal, or for good character, that's blackmail. It's a felony. So they brought her in, threatened her, and that's why she was giggling all through most of her testimony. And they tried to make it sordid and salacious, knowing that they could not get this to stand up, but they would accomplish their purposes in making things difficult for this demented, senile character that we have in office. I call him buzzard bait Biden because he's about to die the way he is carrying himself. And humping hyena Harris is waiting in the wings to take over. So it's kind of a sordid thing. And the vultures, with the rest of the blue boys, they're circling around waiting for the American Republic to die so they can feast off of it. What you're seeing looks like something straight out of Nazi Germany from the early 1930s in terms of the erosion of free speech, if not the outright efforts to eliminate it, the bias in what's going on in terms of what you are allowed to hear, the use of the criminal justice system to impose political controls. And by the way, that's precisely what the Bill of Rights was supposed to prevent, and that is the use of the criminal justice system for purposes of political suppression. So you're seeing it. And when it comes to the difference between Trump and Hunter Biden, I've seen the downloads for the 3, not 1 laptop. See, the press is lying to you. I interviewed the technician and he showed the documents where he got permission to download everything because Hunter Biden was a crackhead, came in, wasn't paying attention to his business, and there were 3 laptops. And when you read them, there are emails back and forth between him and his vice president, dad at the time, and they were discussing criminality, bribery, extortion, all sorts of things. And that bit about the black box behind the vet, his dad kept referring over and over to there are new documents in there. Have your clients look at them. And we find there's an interesting difference between Biden's situation and Trump's situation, and it's this. Under the Constitution, the President of the United States is the chief diplomat for the United States, and two, he's the commander in chief of the military. So, in that role as commander in chief of the military, he can override all of his generals if they want to classify something and he chooses to declassify it, or in the alternative, he can say, we're not going to allow this to be classified because I know something you don't know. I am also the chief diplomat, and in negotiating with, say, the ambassador from France or Germany or Italy, some things came to light that you're unaware of, and the briefings that the CIA gave me, and the CIA is supposed to provide intelligence briefings, digested information that has been obtained through spy networks or analysis or whatever for purposes of briefing the president. NSA, the same thing. That's part of his cabinet and advisory group. He can say, I know something you don't know, so this needs to stay classified. Or in his role as chief diplomat for the country, he can be negotiating with the ambassador from France and, hey, look, you guys don't know this, but the CIA picked this up, or National Security Administration, NSA, espionage has discovered that the Russians are doing this, so I need to tell you about it. That's his discretion. And the U.S. Supreme Court in 1988, in a case that is known as U.S. Department of Navy versus Egan, EGAN, and there are multiple concurring opinions in those. There's not just one opinion. They essentially say that the authority of the president to classify or declassify documents is as absolute and unquestionable as is his right to or authority to pardon or commute sentences. So you can't question the president on commutation or pardon for anything, nor can you question him on his judgment calls. There is a statutory act that says that the archivist can come in and claim it, but that doesn't hold any ice because the way it's written, it's unconstitutional when it applies to the president's authority. And the case from that one goes back much further than 1988. It goes all the way back to 1803. That's 221 years ago. And the name of the case, 221 years ago, and the name of the case is Marbury versus Madison, one of the most important cases in United States history, where the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously held that the president has no obligation to obey an unlawful, unconstitutional act of Congress. That was an interesting one. So under that 1803 case, unanimous by the original Supreme Court of the United States of America, and under the 1988 Supreme Court, he has absolute authority, as it said in several of the concurring opinions, to classify or declassify partially or completely in any form, shape, or fashion he chooses. So it's up to him. So they ought to know this. I trust that these clowns went to law school, but it seems like they don't care. And that's con law, first year law school. So maybe what's going on is in the 50 some years since I was in first year law school, more than 50 years. And people are no longer concentrating on constitutional law as it applies to ordinary citizens, but worrying about con law for large businesses without understanding the aspect of constitutional law when it applies to protecting the rights of citizens and the authority of government to do what it is supposed to do. That whole thing about whether the president has immunity and it is before the Supreme Court has to do with that. What do I mean by immunity? You see the drone ranger we know as Barack Obama killed off a lot of people by ordering drone strikes. That's not legal under American law. That's murder. There was no declared war. And in any event, in one particular instance, when a federal court enjoined him, he disregarded, disobeyed the injunction, and killed a born American citizen and his 16-year-old son born in America, both of them born in Detroit, upstanding American citizens, with an acknowledgement that they'd committed no crime under any law of the United States or state of the United States. But in Obama's opinion, they constituted a threat to the country's security because of their exercise of the First Amendment. So he ordered them killed by a drone strike. Well, the federal court specifically enjoined him from doing that, but within a month and a half, he disregarded the injunction from the federal court and had them murdered. The man who was the father was executed by drone, and 4.5 hours later, his 16-and-a-half-year-old son was executed by drone. The plaintiff in the case was the grandfather and the father, who was an American citizen, who filed an injunction against the federal government and the Obama administration. The administration acknowledged that there was a contract out on.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I think we lost Judge Joe Brown. Let's give him a minute because he might let me see. Put this up here. Sometimes it happens. I don't know if he can hear me or not. I don't think so. He may have to exit and come back in. Let me just double check. Oh, there he is. Oh, and he's gone. Hold on. This happened with earlier with Claire Daly. You guys will see that one tomorrow. I recorded with Claire Daly earlier today, and the same thing happened. And she had to move into Zoom. Let me see if he tried to. It could have just been the connection. We'll see if he comes back. That was really interesting information. We'll give him a second. I'll go to some of the comments while we wait here. Robert says, yep, so many brothers went to jail for decades for what he was charged and convicted for. That is a good point there, Robert. I thought I saw another one that I wanted to go ahead and highlight. It was about the debate. Oh, both parties are traitors. A debate that denies third party and independent candidates who will be on enough ballots to win isn't a debate, but a puppet show. Yeah, for those of you that are just joining, you may have missed what I said there earlier, but it has been brought to my attention and to others in independent media that we cannot cover the debate on Thursday because CNN owns the debate. They have exclusive rights to it. So this is not a debate that's the usual ones that are typically under the congressional like debates, which everybody can just share and stream. CNN actually bought the rights to this. So it is their own private debate that's available to the public. There he goes.
Okay, I'm back. Got knocked off. I think I remember where I was if you want me to keep going.
Oh, you were talking about the drone strikes from Obama.
Yeah. In other words, in specific violation of a federal court order, Obama, as executive, ordered the murder of 2 American citizens, that the U.S. government acknowledged had never committed a crime against the United States nor any state in the United States. It was his posture that he thought that their free speech exercises were not good for the United States. So the judge specifically asked the representatives for the United States. He said, wait a minute, doesn't due process declare that no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law? The government acknowledged that's what the Constitution said. So the judge said, well, how are you going to deprive somebody of their life without due process of law? This is an American citizen. So the government said, well, this supersedes the Constitution. And he said, what supersedes the Constitution? There's no such. So you're just telling me that the government's position, if somebody is unaware of this and they leave the country, they can be assassinated? It's interesting. There are a lot of pauses reflected in the transcript, and the government says, no, Your Honor, that's not quite the government's position. He said, well, thankfully, he said, well, Your Honor, frankly, he doesn't have to leave the country. The judge says, what? He said, did you say he does not have to leave the country? Said, yes, Your Honor. So you're telling the court that your policy from the Obama administration is that you can murder a United States citizen in the continental United States because the president decided he needs to be dead and there's no due process of law about deprivation of life, liberty, or property. They said, well, yes, Your Honor. So the judge says, well, what happens if some local police come in on this and one or two of them get killed? Well, the record reflects that the U.S. representatives asked for a brief moment to confer with each other. And after a 2 to 3 minute conference, they came back, well, Your Honor, the president has pardon power. He can pardon the actors for any crime that may be associated with them carrying out his orders. He said, well, what if it's a state charge? You can't pardon for a state crime. Said, well, Your Honor, that could be said to be a federal action that supersedes the state authority. Judge says, well, yes, but how does he get away with getting around due process of law? So he said, well, it's inherent as his executive powers. The court says, you show me where it says that anywhere in the Constitution or any case law that has occurred in the 200 and at that time 20 some years of this country's history. So the court says the court is issuing a flat out injunction. Leave this man alone. We will touch on this. I will give everyone 60 days to brief this issue. So at about 40 some days, they murdered him anyway, which is violating the law because the Constitution requires that he obey lawful orders of American courts, but he disregarded them. Nothing happened. Now, on this Biden tape, the three of them, there are recordings of White House activity. They still run White House tapes, but they're not just audio like they were back in the Nixon era. They have video. And there's one in particular where Obama is sitting on the front of his desk in the Oval Office with his arms crossed or leaning back against it. Directly in front of him to his right is Hunter Biden. To his center is Joe Biden, and standing to his left, and he's looking at him, is this tall Chinese gentleman that represents the company that Hunter Biden is working for. And Obama says, fast forward to the crucial point, he says, let me get this straight. Now, Joe gets 10%, I get 10%, Hunter gets 10%. The guy says, yes. We've put a deposit up of $100 million cash. You get 10 million. The vice president gets 10 million and his son gets 10 million. And what are they trying to do? They are trying to get the U.S. Navy to back off of aggressive counter patrolling in the South China Sea. They have these atolls, coral outcroppings that don't even break the surface of the water. So what the Chinese were doing is they were going in and they were putting concrete emplacements 25 yards by 35 yards, 50 yards by 100 yards on these coral atolls so that they came above the surface, and then declaring this to be Chinese national territory and declaring a 200-mile radius around it as Chinese territory. So they had the ludicrous position of claiming that everything in Western Japan, the whole coast of Japan outside of the 3-mile limit, was Chinese territory. All of the Vietnamese coastline was Chinese territory. All of the Korean coastline, north and south, was Chinese. And most of the Philippines, which would include the huge U.S. naval base there in Manila, was also part of Chinese territory. And what the U.S. Navy had been doing is sending its Arleigh Burke destroyers in and out of the area, aggressively counter-patrolling the Navy of the Chinese People's Army. So what they wanted is to have this called off. And back checking, we discovered that within 90 days, in Military Times is the official publication of the Pentagon, the U.S. admirals were complaining that they had been told to back off of aggressive counter-patrolling of the Navy for the People's Republic of China, and they couldn't understand why, but that was part of the deal. There was no declared war, but if it had been, it would be treason. And treason, by the way, is the only criminal offense defined in the U.S. Constitution, and it sets forth the elements. It sets forth the witnesses required and the type of evidence that must be developed in order to find somebody guilty of treason. But it is certainly malfeasance, and you can hear them on these, see them on these tapes discussing the $10 million bribe apiece. And there's plenty of stuff on these tapes where Joe Biden is telling Hunter Biden that information, which turns out to be classified, will be in this black box behind the vet in the family garage that he can take his clients by and they can inspect. And there's several episodes of them going back and forth and inspecting new documents put in this box. And the interesting thing is that the Secret Service records 42 some visits to the home place, and it refuses to divulge who these people were that came by to look in the box. So we find, for example, that the special prosecutor appointed by the Department of Justice, has the conclusion that there is probable cause to indict Joe Biden for various felonies, but because he's an old man, in his opinion, hers opinion, they shouldn't indict him because a jury is likely to take his, as they put it, demented condition into consideration and fail to convict him. Now, he's only 26 months older than Trump, but when you get old, various and sundry influences cause people to be demented or suffer from Alzheimer's, and they lose it all, and somebody else stays coherent until they die close to 100. So that's one of the things that's going on. What happens while you give Joe Biden a free pass and you go after Trump for something that the U.S. Supreme Court, as recently as 1988, has already said is within his absolute power? Now, that is the problem. We don't have a declaration from Barack Obama, who was the president at the time, saying, I gave him permission and authorized him to remove these documents. Nobody said that. So that doesn't wash. And then, interestingly enough, they went after Trump twice with impeachment proceedings. They couldn't get a conviction by the Senate neither time. But the last time they went after him, it was to evoke the 12th Amendment so that if he's convicted, he can never run for another office again. But the problem relative to Obama and Joe Biden is that Trump no longer held the office, so they set the precedent for being able to prosecute for grounds that would result in somebody being impeached after somebody has left the office. So the point of the exercise is that Biden was no longer vice president, but because of the act of the Democratic Congress and returning articles of impeachment against Trump after he was no longer president, they set the precedent of being able to proceed against someone when you no longer hold the office. So technically, since there is a clear violation, somebody needs to prosecute Joe Biden for what he did as vice president in breaking the classified documents rules. He had no authority to do anything with them because the Constitution does not grant that authority to the vice president. Now, you get another thing, and I'll say this about Trump, and this is when you hear this nonsense coming from Biden during the so-called debate about the insurrection for January 6th. You have to understand the choice of language. There is no abrogation of the rights that apply to a United States citizen except in two instances. One is when there's a foreign invasion, and two, when there is an insurrection. So an insurrection is what happened with the Civil War. And the Democratic Party is using the term insurrection. So when they get around talking about he needs to be deprived for causing an insurrection, they get people used to the idea. The old propaganda thing is tell a lie long enough, loud enough, you can get anybody to believe it. So we hear this over and over and over from mainstream media, and it doesn't have a damn thing to do with reality. It was not an insurrection. 180 people attempting to insurrect and overthrow 360 million people is absolutely preposterous, since nobody seems to have been armed. Next thing, that is the seat of the U.S. government. You got Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, with multiple bases, National Guard, Army Reserves located all in this area. There is no way 180 people could have done anything. Next point, he supposedly tried to get Pence to disobey the law. There is an active law on the books. It's called the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877. As a matter of fact, the next thing on the congressional agenda on January 6th was a consideration of that act of 1877. What it says is that the vice president, when there is a great deal of question about an election process, shall not certify the proposed electoral count, but shall instead call for the appointment of a 5-member body from the House, a 5-member body from the U.S. Senate, and a 5-member body from the U.S. Supreme Court. The 15-man committee will be presided over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. They are directed to take a minimum of 10 days to conduct an independent audit, or such extra time as is reasonably necessary to accomplish their purposes, and report back to the American public as to whether or not there was, in fact, a valid, open, and non-corrupted election. That's what the law requires. It's been evoked several times since 1877. So when Trump tells Pence not to do it, the problem is that mainstream media left out that he was insisting that the man follow the law, which is there was great upset about whether this was a fair election, and that's exactly what the 1877 statute says. There was supposed to be a 15-man committee formed to audit the election and make a report back as to whether or not there was a fair election. So he was not advocating any breaking of the law. The fact of the thing is, he was advocating compliance with the law. That's his job. So when you start telling him that you should go to jail because you made the wrong call, well, he had the authority under the American statutory law existing since 1877, which is what, 140 years ago. So how can you say you're going to prosecute someone when they had immunity? Because that's what the chief executive is supposed to do. The statute specifically says he is to advise his vice president that there is a lack of confidence and urge the vice president to exercise his responsibility. It even gives him the authority to overrule the vice president if he fails to exercise his fiduciary responsibility to the country. So that is absolutely ridiculous when they start talking about he violated the law. That is just nonsense that the mainstream media is putting out there. Now, I've been doing this. I graduated pretty well at UCLA Law School 55 years ago, and there is nobody that you hear saying anything for CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, whatever the case may be, Fox, that went to a better law school than I did. And I got accepted to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, but decided to go to UCLA. And there's nobody, not even anybody on the U.S. Supreme Court, who's been at this longer than me. And the closest one is Clarence Thomas, who is 3 years my junior in the profession. So I'm not some rookie for CNN running off at his big mouth, and he's out of law school for 3.5 years talking like he's an expert on something.
This is why it's important to hear the legal perspective, because I think sometimes it's easy for us to take sides or to just get caught up in what they say on mainstream media. But it's good to hear the legal perspective, like what does the law say? Judge Joe Brown, speaking of the 2024 election, I want to show you something really quick, and I want to get your opinion about this if you've been looking at these polls. This is Black voters, Biden versus Donald Trump. I just want to play a couple seconds of this really quick.
Norm, and it's simply put, has not yet. So this is the margin, or Biden and Trump among black voters, compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. You know, at this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now, we're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades. And when you...
Okay, yeah, that's an understatement. I think the numbers are worse for Biden than it's suggested here. One of the things is see, I get out in the streets, and when I'm in a club, bar, or something, and I hang around, start talking to people, what I'm getting from black men is an identification with Trump. In other words, they're dumping on him like they dump on us. So that's quite the contrary for Biden and his crackhead son. They get away with everything. So we can't. So maybe we need to support somebody that understands what we go through, because he's more likely to be empathetic with what our desires are in return for a vote. And we're not like the black women who seem to be so deep off into the Biden camp.
Not all of us.
Not all of you, but too many. And see, black men have been essentially excluded from the process by the Democratic Party, little by little, more and more and more, much more over the last 25 years, until it has gotten absolutely ridiculous. There are no black men in positions of power. You see Fannie Willis, you see Letitia James, you see, let's see, what's the black female chancellor that just got arrested over the weekend down in Atlanta, and you've got the district attorney for Baltimore just got convicted and sentenced a slap on the wrist, which I thought she didn't deserve because it's not as per the federal guidelines. She got house arrest. You've got the horrible affair going on in New York with Fox, and this whole panoply of I'm above it all. The rules don't apply to me, and black men are saying, wait a minute, we're not part of this whole thing. We're not getting anything out of it. We got a thing here in Memphis where the mayor has blocked anybody from asking questions on the city's official site on X/Twitter. You've got an order that got exposed by some of the local radio stations where the mayor and the chief of police gave a directive to the police department to not report violent crime and homicide. And they reported 2 wounding shootings for last weekend. And it turned out when the investigation was done, there were 9 fatalities that were not reported. So this kind of selective information, that's classic propaganda. That is censorship. That is restriction of reality. And it is very, very bad. We have a scene here in Tennessee, up in Nashville. There was a tranny freak who became very much aggrieved that a certain private school had encouraged him to make a transition and I don't know if he cut his stuff off or not, but he wrote a manifesto which was secured, and he went to the school and killed 3 children and 3 adults, and the manifesto explained why. A conservative reporter was allowed to photograph that, and he published it, and it turns out he was saying it's their fault. They encouraged me to make this transition. They didn't tell me the consequences. I wasn't but a young student, and I ruined my life and all of the rest of it. So he went to go get revenge, killed 6 people before he got killed. So they're trying to keep that from being exposed so nobody finds out that this isn't the case. The medical profession, American Medical Association Institute, American Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, Sociology, they issued a report last month, and they said this is garbage. It is not mainstream medicine that this kind of thing is normal. It's an abnormal deviation. It is a mental health problem, and these people need treatment. And anyway, within 4 years, a minimum of 75% of the people who at early adolescence claim that they want to transition to something else change their minds. So it is absolutely inexcusable to allow either chemical or physical mutilation of a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old child because somebody's going rah, 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 hate yourself. And the psychiatry that's involved is deeply flawed because that's not the way to handle it. So this is a kind of people don't want to get out there.
They're not freaks, Judge Joe Brown. They're not freaks.
Franny is a goddamn freak.
People used to say that about black people too.
It ain't the same thing. Black people are human. And if you look at lions, grizzly bears, tigers, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, you look at birds, you look at fish. And Mother Nature for 4.5 billion years has been working on mating behavior, mating rituals, response of one gender to the other when it comes to mating, when it comes to child rearing. And that is what nature has set up. For somebody to go in and masquerade as being something else without an objective to breed is ridiculous. Besides, I can tell you a little funny thing. What do you see anytime you see a human?
A person? I don't know.
No, it's a successful screw. Somebody had a successful screw. 9 months later, something got born, it got raised, it matured, it seduced something. There was a successful screw, and another generation is born. And anytime you look at humans, you're looking at a series of successful screws. So these idiots want to jump into this and screw it up. Number one hobby for women used to be boy watching. Number one hobby for guys used to be girl watching. Now nobody does it because they don't know what the hell they're looking at. So they're ruining this breeding scheme. By the way, do you know what Putin and Russia are saying are their reasons for being in the Ukraine? One, a lot of Ukrainians said they wanted to go back under the Russian umbrella. They were under the Soviet Union as the largest republic in the Soviet Union. And before that, they were part of Tsarist Russia for several hundred years. That's one reason. Next reason is they say they're trying to deal with the resurgence of Nazism in the area. And a lot of these people you see coming over with the open collared shirts and the jackets on because they just came in from out of the field. With 10, 15 years ago, when you saw them with their wife beaters on, they had all this Nazi paraphernalia and swastikas tattooed all over. And the next reason is to prevent the United States and certain portions of Western Europe from imposing this poisonous rainbow cult that is trying to destroy the mating rituals of humanity.
So here's what I think about that. I think that is a distraction from us focusing on the economic issues, from us focusing on the oligarchs that are in power. I feel like the culture war issue is a distraction. And I think that we should let people be what they want to be and focus on the people who are controlling the money.
Okay, let me answer that one. I've sentenced or signed the death warrants on quite a number of defendants who were convicted of first-degree murder. I always required a psychological evaluation. A lot of those first-degree murderers had a compulsion to commit homicide because they were homicidal maniacs, or they were sociopaths with no respect for human life. Now, that is the same as some of these freaks running around talking about they're misgendered. Well, do you think we can allow people to go around killing folk because they have a pathological urge to do so? No, we can't. Do you think we can allow people to go around and molest children because they have a pathological compulsion to be pedophiles? No, we can't. So there are things, whether you have an urge or not, you have to resist. And society has an overweening interest to make sure that that is not something that is done frequently. Don't care how strong somebody's urge to do it is. And what we have right now is something that is more important than the economics, and that is they're trying to ruin the human family structure. And when you ruin humanity, you do not have an effective next generation to even worry about economics because the nuclear family is destroyed. We saw that in count one of the BLM manifesto until we got on them so badly, they changed it. We are for the destruction of the traditional nuclear family.
But Judge Joe Brown, people make the same comments that you just made. People make those same comments about interracial relationships too.
Oh, they don't. Not now. You can't find anything. No, it doesn't make any difference because it doesn't count. A lot. We talk about white folk, call them crackers, honkies, and Karens, and all this other stuff. Rednecks, trailer park trash, but it doesn't make them secondary citizens. We call each other the N word all the time, and tell
I
lies
know.
to each other when we start talking about it as friendly. Because when you call somebody that N word, your subconscious knows good and well what it means, and you are talking negatively about yourself. Everybody does that. That's human nature. It's called xenophobia, which is the aversion to the different. You can't get it out of humans, but in certain instances, there is a compelling interest for them to deal with each other. And we've got an interesting opportunity here. This is the first time there is something that can unify the whole country, because whether you're white, black, brown, red, yellow, you're a human. You are a human mammal. And what goes on is mammals, primates, and human primate mammals have an established way through culture and physiological evolution of dealing with the opposite sex so that they can breed and raise the next generation of humans. And when somebody's got to trying to screw that up, then all humans who are normal have a vested interest in straightening it out. So instead of everybody being at everybody's throats, everybody's got a common interest. It is the home team versus these folk who are trying to destroy stuff. And I'm not talking about homosexuals, because I've had enough gay guys tell me they don't want to be dealing with somebody they think is a guy and it turns out to be a girl, because they don't like girls. And I've had lesbians tell me they think this is a cute looking girl and they like nookie, and then they find out it's still got a dick. No, they don't want that. So that's a fraud to everybody. And you see what happens is you've got a coalition there that they've set up, LGBTQIA. What's that? Lesbian, gay, bisexual. Then they added the T on tranny, which was cross dressing, which is transvestite technically. And then they got the LGBTQ, which is questioning and queer. And then they got the I, intersectionality, which means you bring in the pedophiles and those who are trying to deal with corrupting the situation even further. So a lot of them remember unfondly the first time somebody turned them out when they were 8 or 9 years old, and some sick uncle or some sick friend or somebody stuck something up their butts and they weren't supposed to happen, or somebody went down on them who's got the same equipment and they didn't know what was going on. You see, there are all kinds of things. Or even reality. A friend tells me, he said, Joe, I was in Atlanta. I was in the Delta First Class Lounge, and I saw what I thought was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And I got up enough nerve to go over and speak to her, and it turned out to be a boy. See, that is ridiculous. And then the other thing comes into humans depend upon each other dealing with their responsibilities. Men are supposed to provide and protect. Women are supposed to advise and nurture. So what happens is the Titanic #2 goes down the next time. Maybe it's a spaceship. There aren't enough lifeboats or life capsules. So the men are supposed to say, ma'am, you and your child get my seat on this rescue device. I'll die with the ship. But now you got some freaked out sissy coming in there with a dress talking about, I got the seat. No, that's not how humanity works. And we're trying to get away from and emasculate the country. And that is a very bad thing because it's got fallout. Most of this BS in the streets where people are killing each other in the hood or in the hallways is from some emasculated creeps who never found out how it was to be a boy growing to be a man with a strong incentive to be a man because he's been told over and over of the virtue of being one. It deals with us protecting youth from bullying, and they never learn how to deal with bullies as they grow up, and that's pathetic because every human has to learn to screw up the courage because essentially what we are hunting animals. So when we developed over the most of the 250,000 years outside of the last few millennia, what was going on is when we wanted to have a summer barbecue, 10, 15, 20 of us had to go out and kill something weighing 12 to 16,000 pounds that would squash us flat. But we did it. And we had to have courage and bravery and watch everybody sick. So if somebody got in trouble, we could get them out. That's how we depended on each other. So now that's going on.
Judge Joe Brown, that was a long time ago.
It's not a long time ago. Right now, the country and the world is overpopulated. There is a problem with weather. The seas are rising because the ice caps are melting. The weather is changing. Crops are not growing because the precipitation has altered and they aren't getting watered, and there will be food shortages. And that means the whole thing is liable to get primitive again. We are at the tail end of a bubble that developed during the 20th century, where the world became reasonably safe, modern medicine became reasonably effective, and most of the war situations got resolved 75 years ago, except for little brush fires. So what happens right now is nobody remembers what it was like, and it's not going to stay safe. You walk out here to your grocery store, to your gas station, and these unmanly little hood rat creeps are out there acting in an unmasculine fashion, where they're killing off women and children and each other under the pretext of committing suicide by neighbor. You've heard of suicide by cop. Well, we've got suicide by neighbor. Get one of your neighbors to kill you. Hey, man, what you looking at, man? I ain't looking at nothing, man. Yes, you are. You call me a liar, man?
I think what's important to remember is that not everyone's experience is the same. Not everyone who's a part of the LGBTQ community has been touched as a child. So I highly encourage you, Judge Joe Brown, to have a conversation with someone that's a part of that community.
I worked in Hollywood where 9 out of every 10 people were that. And I'm not talking about homosexuality. I'm talking about damn freaks that don't like what they are. Men who are homosexual like men. They don't mind being men. Women who are homosexual like other women, but they don't mind being women. Homosexual women, straight women compete in athletics. They don't need to be dealing with some spoiled, failed boys who want to put on sports bras and panties and compete against them. That's not fair.
But what I'm trying to explain to you, Judge O'Brien, and I do want to move on to what happened in Tulsa. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that, again, what someone is wearing, how they are dressing, who they choose to date or whatever, that is a distraction from the people that are controlling the economy and are keeping a lot of people poor. That is a distraction from the top 1% that is oppressing all of us. So it's important that we focus on those bread and butter issues instead of focusing on the culture war.
Are you? Are you oppressed?
Yeah, I'm oppressed.
Why don't you do something about it?
Judge Joe Brown.
See, this is
Have you been to the
Did you hear the baseball player when he gave his statement this weekend about what it was like? See, I'm of that generation. When what he was talking about going on, I was in high school or college. And the bottom line is that we never talked about oppression. It was get the hell out of our way. We'll do it ourselves. Or when they got off of these folk down on their knees while somebody was beating the crap out of them until somebody else felt guilty about it, they were saying, if you don't stop, we'll do it. It's called burn, baby, burn. That was our thing.
Judge Joe Brown.
65, 66. We didn't play that.
Judge Joe Brown.
The bottom line is stop thinking of yourself as oppressed.
No, listen. Getting back to the core economics, do you realize a lot of people in my generation can't afford to buy a home?
Well, that's their fault.
No, it's not.
It is.
Wait a minute.
I know about discrimination, but you know where the fault comes in? Because there's no racist white supremacist sitting on the other side of a kid's kitchen table keeping him from doing his homework. His mama ain't getting him to do his homework, or his daddy, or his uncle, or his grandparents are, because they don't know it. They let him go play damn video games instead of getting his act together. So when he gets grown, he's ill prepared to work for the world. You start talking about what's wrong. I try to hire black folk. I have the damnedest time because there's some lazy son of a bitches that won't work. And I'm saying, look, I'm trying to give you a chance. You need to learn what the hell your job's about and stick to it and do what your job requires if you want to get paid. This isn't something where anybody owes you a damn thing. Because out there in the real world, there's stuff that'll eat your ass for lunch. That's what you got to do.
Judge Joe Brown, I went to undergrad. I went to grad school. I have several. I went to undergrad at University of South Carolina. I went to grad school at Northeastern University. I have several friends that have professional jobs and they cannot afford to buy a home, not because they weren't educated, not because they didn't save their money or spend their money properly, because a lot of the single family homes, particularly where I live, have been bought up by real estate investors and developers and companies like BlackRock. So it's not so much that there's no homes available. It's that these developers have come in and they've bought up these single family homes. They renovate the homes and then they increase the price. The average home near me starts at $750,000. That's in where I live in Massachusetts. If you can be a nurse, you can be a lawyer, but the reality is, if you don't have a 2-income household where you're making at least over $100,000 a year, you are not going to be able to buy a house here. That is the reality. Those people didn't fail in education. Those people did what they were told to do. They did well in school. They had a professional job. But again, going back to the core economic issues and the people who were at the top, that is a problem.
Okay, now let's talk about the people at the top. There is a thing called political control, and this is a republic, and there's a thing called politics. Why the hell do we always vote for somebody that doesn't give a damn about us but gives everything for the rainbow cult? How do we have this discussion where only 70% of black males are for Trump instead of 90%, where you still have all of this other group, not 70%, 30% for Trump and 70% of black folk for this racist dog Biden? Why the hell do we vote that way? See, we don't have good sense. That's why if you sat there and paid attention to what was going on, instead of going along like a dog and being loyal to massa, we would vote people in who would give a damn about our circumstances. But nobody has deprived black folk of voting. Not in a long time.
Well, most of the people that watch this show do not support Joe Biden. A lot of people that watch this show are post-duopoly. So I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I definitely do not support Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I agree. I think a part of the problem is people are loyal to a certain party. So obviously, as you've seen over the years, the African-American community tends to be loyal to the Democratic Party. Do I think that's the right thing to do? No, I don't. But I think the difference is I think that both parties are corporate and corrupt.
Oh, that's a bad excuse.
But it's true.
Bad excuse. You got a fake Negro, the humping hyena, who is sitting there waiting for something to die. You've got the buzzard bait in there, chief executive. He's been a racist his whole damn career, and he used to brag about his mentor was Byrd, former Grand Dragon of the KKK, Senator Byrd. He spoke the eulogy at the Klan Dragon's funeral and bragged about it. And we want to talk about nonsense that we are so stupid we believe. And I'm not talking about the people that are listening here who are anti-Biden. I'm talking about why in the hell are we loyal to the Democratic Party? Nobody else in this country, no other ethnic group has absolute loyalty to anybody but the colored folk, Negroes. Because every now and then they flip-flop and they say, we don't like what you're doing. You're not doing enough, and you taking us for granted. So let your well run dry so you miss your water. We got to do that. Bottom line is the Democratic Party was chartered in the second decade of the 19th century to spread slavery into Louisiana Purchase and to protect it. 1851, the Republican Party was chartered with the express purpose of getting rid of slavery, abolition. And then most black folk up until 1960 were absolute Republicans. King, most of the people you want to talk about. So when did we decide to become Democrat and everything flopped? Well, bottom line, it's been in my lifetime when I was old enough to understand what the hell was going on. So we have to understand it. We have to do what the rest of the country does. We have no loyalty except the self-interest. And we need to turn the clock around, because if you give your loyalty to one political party, no matter what they fail to do, and you refuse to even consider voting for another party, no matter what they may try to do, neither party has an incentive to do a damn thing for you, because neither party will lose anything in one case or gain anything by helping you out. That is stupid. And by the way, my major at UCLA, I had several: military science, physics, vertebrate paleontology, and the one I declared the major in, which was political science. So this is just raw political science. I think it's political science 126 A and B. And the bottom line is we don't seem to get it, because we got to be loyal. We've got a black caucus. That's all you need to start pushing for legislation, for reparations, for things that you have discussed about inequities in what's going on. But you know what the Black Caucus has done? Not one damn thing in 30 some years. They haven't introduced anything. But I tell you what the problem is. If you look at the membership of the Black Caucus and the membership for the Liberty Caucus, the Liberty Caucus is the LGBTQIA caucus, you'll find there are just 5 or 6 black congressmen that don't belong to the gay caucus. So they do everything for them, but they haven't introduced anything for us. Do you know who the chairman of the reparations committee is for the Black Caucus? It's a gay white Jew boy from Memphis. His name is Steve Cohen. He's been a congressman for 19 and a half years for a district that is 92% black. And his net legislative effort that he brags about is a binding resolution on the congressional cafeteria mandating the exclusive use of paper straws. That's all he's done. But he's chairman of the Black Caucus's Reparations Committee. Now, how the hell are you going to get anything? He's also chairman of the Liberty Party's or Freedom Party's Reparations Committee. And 2 weeks after that debacle 5 years ago, where Congress was having all that showpiece on whether or not to set up a study for reparations, 2 weeks, he introduced legislation on behalf of the Rainbow Cult, and it was styled the Gay Reparations Act. It passed on the first voice vote with no debate, and it is now the law. It started off with just chump change, $58 million, dealing with insurance benefits denied gay couples, but it's opening it and no telling how much has been spent. So why in the hell do we have some white gay Jew running the Black Caucus's Reparations Committee? Why is he running the same thing for the gay committee? And what happens? They get reparations by name. We get nothing. So what is the problem here? We have an ample opportunity to cure the problems you're talking about by introducing legislation. And black people, well, I'll give you an example. Everybody thinks Jews have all of this political and economic power. Do you know what percentage of the American public the Jewish community is?
There's a small portion, but I don't want to get into, because that's the whole nother thing. And again,
know, that's
a whole nother.
Why don't we do something with our tremendous clout where everybody either gains or suffers from our lack of support? Why don't we take advantage of it?
So here's the thing I say about that. Okay, perfect example. What just happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Because I hear what you're saying about the Black Caucus isn't really helping. I totally get that. Totally hear that. But I think what I'm trying to
Tulsa,
say.
Oklahoma, where they
But
said you have no standing
but
for
listen. Here's
yeah.
here's
Okay.
here's the question, real quick. One of the things I try to do on this show is get to some type of solutions. And I brought multiple reparations activists on this show to talk about why we need reparations. However, I have not received a response in reference to what can we do legally. And the Tulsa case, I thought, was our best hope. And what I'm seeing is here you have survivors that were alive during the Tulsa massacre, and they even told them no. So what can we do legally?
Time out. Who were they going to sue?
The state.
How can you? The state has sovereign immunity. You cannot sue a municipality, a county, a state, or the federal government unless they give you permission by statute. So who are you going to sue? No statutory allocation. That's called an enablement and an appropriation act by somebody's legislative body. Where is the Black political clout to elect the people that would see to that? You cannot sue anybody because the rule, it has always been when you have a personal injury situation, which is when somebody does something that deals with enslavement, that's a personal injury. It dies with the person who's offended. It does not survive unless there's a wrongful death thing. And the wrongful death action does not survive the person that perpetrated it. So everybody's been dead 100 some years that was around when slavery was going on. So who exactly do you sue? You see, you have to have Enablement and Appropriations Act, and that's the only way you're going to get it. Somebody has to say, because of the inequities that are involved, the United States government or the government of such and such state owes these people who have had an ongoing long-term sufferance because of what was enabled by the state. And they've been cut off in terms of the legacy that they might have otherwise inherited. Somebody's going to have to do that, but there's nobody pushing that. That's the only way you can get it. You see, who are these survivors, 90, 100 years old, 104 years old, who were infants at the time this occurred? Who are they going to sue?
But Judge Joe Brown, have you explained this to, because we just had a panel about this. Have you explained this to reparations activists? Have you explained to them?
I can't help it if they're ignorant of the law. They got to ask me. I'm around. They can ask me. But no, they got to talk to everybody that's got an opinion. And that's like everybody's got something they wipe when they go to a toilet too. Ask somebody that knows. You're asking the wrong people. And some of the lawyers that are on the pedestal, they've never even tried a case. They've never even briefed a case. They've never filed an appeal. They've never made any law, but they have big reps because they've settled cases for chicken change. And that's not anything that is any good for anybody. See, you have Thurgood Marshalls. You have people like that now dead. You have a whole generation of people now dead that busted their behind trying to get something together. You had one time 70, 80,000 members of the Black Bar Association, National Bar Association. Now they don't have but 2,300 paid members, and it's turned into a social club. So nobody is exchanging information. And most of them are some chicken change folk that have never tried a damn case. And they treat it as a social club. So you don't have black lawyers. You got some punk, sissy cowards who don't have the balls to stand up for somebody. So you get someone that puts on an appearance, can't even speak English, but you've got some guy like the one brother that's representing the whistleblowers down in Georgia. Nobody ever heard of him. You got the other brother that got 20 days because he stood up to a judge that was way, way wrong and out of line about having an ex parte hearing and not revealing it. So, I mean, that's the kind of somebody you need to push because nobody can do anything for you if they don't have the balls or the intestinal fortitude to do it. And we've got a bunch of people that we prop up who are doing, they trying to pick on me because I'm a black woman. No, they're not. You just acted a damn fool, and you ought to be hauled up because what you did was unethical and inappropriate and against the law. So don't try to go that way, but we buy it. And we spend more time looking at Atlanta Housewives, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, bullshit than we do paying attention to what's going on. We don't study somebody that can set bonds, somebody that can sentence, somebody that can deal with establishing child support, whether or not you have custody, the terms and course of visitation. We wait till we show up on election day and get handed a sheet of paper by some charlatans who got paid a lot of money to put somebody's name on a sample ballot and vote that instead of by our knowledge. We run around whining about it's unfair to require ID. Every thug out there on the street damn near has a driver's license. So he went down and got the driver's license. You can register to vote the same time, same place. You get driver's licenses. Oh, but California and New York have messed the license stuff up because they want to give them to illegals because it's supposed to make the road safer. So now nobody trusts the official license. And if you don't have that star in it, you can't get on the airplane through TSA after fall. But we let that happen and nobody deals with hauling it into a perspective that we elect for our representative. Back to Memphis, you got a gay white Jew person who has been congressman for 19 and a half years in a 92% black district that had the first black elected congressman since Reconstruction back in 1974. That was Harold Ford Sr. When, by the way, he said this election is a cheat. He tore down a wall and found all of these hidden boxes of ballots that got him elected. But now we want to put somebody in jail for doing the same kind of claim. Now, his son took over. His son decided to run for U.S. Senate. There were 14 black folk ran for the Democratic primary for U.S. congressman in the 9th congressional district. There was one gay white Jew guy, and he got a small number of votes. He became the Democratic candidate, and he's been in for 19 and a half years, and he hasn't done a damn thing for the city, for black folk in this state, or for the nation. But we go for that. And the only reason why anything's subject to coming up on that is he's suffering apparently from Parkinson's and is in a wheelchair and might not run. So now we have a failed white mayor who was the white mayor after there were 7 black folk running for the same spot against an incumbent black mayor. He got a small number of people in a certain district after he got his first political office. You know how he got it? He got on everybody's sample ballot. So he put the white picture, which was himself, over the black man's name and put his name under the black man's picture. That's how he got elected. Now what he's doing, since he wants to be congressman, he's hired 5 people trying to get 2 more so he can run 7 people in the race for Congress for the primary against some black that has a good chance of being favored, but that person is a crook and won't do any good if you get in. So he can get a small minority of the people to get him elected out here by the naval base. That'll get him in as a Democratic candidate, which will guarantee, since black folk always vote Democratic, that he will be the new congressman for the 9th district. Even the white people call him Pillsbury Doughboy because he's useless. So
but Judge
that's
Joe
what
Brown,
we do.
Judge Joe Brown, seriously though, getting back to this who do we sue thing. So Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps got reparations.
There's a reason why. They were identified by individual status. John and so and so and so and so and Willie and whatever. All of these people were locked up in an internment camp. It was a violation of the Constitution, so there was a special private act of Congress that says they need to be awarded reparations and damages. You could point to them. They were checked in. The ID was there. They were identified. You got Congress to sit up and say, for the Jewish population, we should have done something to have saved them from the extermination camps. We didn't. So out of a sense of guilt, we'll do something about it. But the problem is that nobody introduced anything like that back when, though I will say this, reparations is not new. This is the third time in my life where it has come up. One of my best friends, also a lawyer, roommated one time. He used to work back in the 70s with the UN, and what he was doing was working on reparations. My father and mother, born in 1910 and 1917, they went after reparations twice. My maternal grandfather was born in 1850. He was 15 when General Sherman on January 16, 1865 signed a general order for his military district granting 40 acres of confiscated rebel land and one army mule to every black family. It was working. Congress passed enabling legislation. That was Republican then, the House and the Senate. Republican President Abraham Lincoln approved of it. What happened? He gets assassinated. And then you got Democrat Johnson from Tennessee, who was brought in by Lincoln as a compromise to promote reconciliation. He vetoed all of that, and it would have been worth some good amount of money in today's funds, and also the opportunity to make money off of it. And what do? I want to grow me some fruits and vegetables and have separate land. That's not how it works. People have been trying to get around that for the last 50,000 years, since the middle of the last ice age, and deal with concourse and intercourse with each other all over the world and developing trade routes and cultural assimilation. So we want to go get isolated, and we don't have what it takes to run a damn community because we don't know economics. Do we take economics in school? How many of us want to do that?
I did.
Yeah, you got it. But then, one of the main problems we have is, where does our investment money go? I tithe 25% to my church. Yes, sir. The Lord gonna bless me. You damn fool, you give 1/4 of your income that you could be using to invest, and you give it to a pimp preacher? What the hell is the matter with you? That's one of the main reasons we get nowhere, is because all of our free investment money is tied up, tithing and donating to a pulpit pimp. Not all of them are, but too many of them are.
Hey, I agree with you on that one.
So where do we get away? 1/4 of our income. All of these people sitting up in there bragging about, I'll give tithe 20%. What's the matter with you? Mexicans come in. I watched this when my show started. I was out on California's side from 1998 on up for the next 15 years. I watched poor Mexicans go deal with 8, 9, 15 people in a 1 or 2 bedroom place. They donated 1 or 2 pennies to the Catholic Church. They saved their money, and they wound up getting interest in gas stations, which they own now, tire repair and tire sales businesses. They now own convenience stores, grocery store franchises, all sorts of stuff. They've sent 2 generations of their children to school, so they learn economics, and they've got finances that they use to deal with them. They haven't even been here 50 years. They haven't even been here 25 years, and they're running stuff. We've been here for how many 100 years? And what do? When they got those COVID checks, you go down to Atlanta and you go to the malls. You go to Memphis and you go to the malls. You see them all lined up buying Air Jordans, $280 a pair of tennis shoes. And if you read them, it's insulting. You know what the label says? Not made in Vietnam, made in Hanoi, Vietnam, where all of the American prisoners of war were kept. Hanoi Hilton. And all of those brothers I went to high school with, college with, who died over there. And what do we get? So their descendants can buy $280 tennis shoes that they don't know how to play basketball to put to good use because they want bling. We've got to do better. We can do better. I've seen people do it. Get the hell out of my way and I'll do it myself. And I saw black folk doing it. But we went downhill when we tried to get too inclusive. We all got to stand together. But we tried, but some of the people you shouldn't have stood with because they are informants, snitches, pimps, and hustlers and hoes. And they're trying to use the movement for personal gain. So we went for this thing where it's black entertainment, and we let the Hollywood run a game on us where they pushed black exploitation. They were going broke, but they needed the money. So somebody came up with the bright idea. Let's get these Negroes. Oh, Chuck, are they calling themselves black these days? Or is it Afro-American? I don't know, Chuck. What the hell? Let's get them something so they'll put dollars up at the box office and we can come and, well, what are we going to do? Well, we maybe need to get something to inspire. No. What the hell? They don't need that. Let's go to the lowest common denominator. Let's just put out pimps, hoes, drug dealers, thieves, murderers, burglars, bank robbers, and they'll go for that shit. Yeah, Chuck, I think you're right. And then we got Black Caesar starring Fred the Hammer Williams, where the hero was a drug kingpin and a murderer. The hero drives off into the sunrise smoking a big cigar in the back of a limo after having his boys kill 40-some people. We got Superfly, where I looked at a line with my roommate who wound up working on reparations for the UN. We drove around the block on 14th near U Street, downtown DC. Short end, black folk were coming out after buying the ticket. They went down the long end, then around the short end, back up the long end, down the short end to get in the show. They were standing out in this hot weather for 3.5 hours to get in to see this damn movie. Then you had Foxy Brown. She's a pretty girl, you know. Pam Grier. But if you ever saw the Foxy Brown stuff that they showed in Europe and in some places like Los Angeles, every time she got knocked down, which was 8 or 9 times in the movie, one of her bare tits would pop out. You get a beaver shot for free 3 or 4 times shown in. And there would be the obligatory 4 or 5 naked white girls wet with a towel thrown across one shoulder as they paraded through the living room in an apartment, which was supposed to be some room in somebody's mansion. It was just bullshit. And the plot line was always Sister Gal's brother got killed by the drug lord, so she wants revenge. Then it morphed into Sister Gal's brother was trying to deal drugs. He got killed by the drug lord, so now she wants to be the drug queen pin. And it was just a glorification of dysfunctionality. And then we got hip hop that morphed from a contest between somebody playing DJ for a block party in Manhattan or Harlem or someplace else. And they'd have contests to see who could talk the most smack. And people would vote on who was the best. Now it morphed into the late 70s into what I call ego rap, talking about how bad somebody is. I'm all this and that. And now it's just dysfunction. My bitches and hoes, they all do so and so. You know, like, are you talking about your women like that? What's the matter with you? See, it's just we get into glorification of dysfunction, and it is no wonder that we are in our thing. I was a grown man when this stuff started, a young grown man, and I saw it go downhill. I was playground director along with Cliff Stewart, Grandmaster Cliff Stewart, and Ron Chappelle, Grandmaster Ron Chappelle, and Joe Brown. All of us got doctorate degrees eventually, but we ran a playground at Trinity Avenue Elementary School, the worst place in LA school system, where we organized the community, got everybody together, and we had 2 students I'm sure you've heard. One of them was an absolute success, and the other one was an absolute badass. The success was a skinny 12-year-old kid who was a volunteer, and we got his mother to go along with the program we were trying to put in place. You know him as the late singer Barry White. They put his age up to match his deep voice. The other person was the last person executed on California's death row. We knew him when he was a 14-year-old volunteer. He was one of the smartest kids I ever ran into, wound up writing 6 books. And we couldn't get his mother to let him get out of the hood because she wanted her check, so he couldn't escape the swamp. So he became the baddest alligator in the swamp. His name was Tookie Williams, and he helped co-found the Crips out in LA. He became the last person executed on California's death row, which was totally chicken shit, because the governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, should have commuted his sentence to life after he wrote those books. We think the reason that didn't happen is because Arnold and Tookie used to spot for each other at Gold's Gym out in Santa Monica when they pumped a lot of iron. So I guess the governor didn't want that connection with somebody that was on death row, so he didn't set his execution aside and changed the sentence to life in the penitentiary. So there are a whole lot of things that go on. I've seen the downhill slide. I've seen pride when nobody was asking for a damn thing. We could do it ourselves. We were doing it ourselves. We accomplished a lot. And then I saw all of these pimps, hustlers, snitches, and informants and outright agents for these alphabetical agencies who infiltrated it. I saw what Hollywood did to destroy this whole damn thing. And I'm looking at black folk 50 years later, and instead of having this level of anger and we can do attitude, whine incessantly about what somebody is doing to hold them back. Yes, they do it. But hell, we grew up in Africa. Some of us grew up in North America because we got a lot of Native American / American Indian in us. Some of us came from China because a lot of black folk have 25% Chinese in them because Chinese coolies came over here after the Civil War to make railroads, and they didn't have any Chinese nookie, so they got ex-slave nookie. So China, Africa, you get the situation with North America, and you get the European stuff in here, and we had adversity. There were lions and tigers and grizzly bear, polar bear, all sort of stuff that would love to have you for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or a midnight snack, and you the main course. That's adversity. We took it on. And in Africa, for example, you had to kill yourself a male Simba when you were 13 with a spear that didn't even have an iron head on it. So we can conquer that, but now we whine about just ordinary human adversity. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. So, I mean, the bottom line is we are too afraid to die. And the paradox is when you become too afraid to die in your own behalf, you lose respect for yourself and you want to die because you want to commit suicide, but you don't put the gun to your own head. You get suicide by cop. You don't put the gun to your own head. You get suicide by neighbor. You don't put the gun to your own head. You do suicide by drugs. Oh, gee, did you hear what happened to poor Paul last week? No, what happened? You know, he was so depressed. Yes, I know. He was talking about life had no meaning. Oh, you know, he jumped out of the 14th floor of his father's office building. Oh, my God. Hey, man, you hear what happened to Stomp, man? No, man, what happened, man? I heard something bad went down. No, man, we was over short dogs, man. We had some fire smoke, man. We was hitting that glass dick, man. And the next thing I know, man, short dog down on the ground, man. well, stomped down on the ground, man. You know, eyes rolled up on the top of his head, foam coming all out his mouth, heels was kicking, man. As soon as we cleaned the place up, man, we called 911, bust dude's heart out, man, before we could get him to the emergency room, man. Hey, man, that's some cold-blooded shit, man. Oh, we mama don't freak. Ain't that the second one she done lost this year? See, that is a suit. I used to get these people evaluated when I'd have to sentence them. The psychiatrists and psychologists were at first amazed. Judge, you realize how much suicidal ideation we're getting to? These people can't be reformed until they decide they want to live. They want to die. So the first priority is not to get them drug free. First priority is not to get them crime free. First priority is to get them to want to live. And you give people that feeling when you give them a purpose and a cause. So when in the mirror, they look back every morning and they say, man, it was rough yesterday. Yeah, but you got a cause, man. You got to keep fighting. Did you do what you supposed to do yesterday? Well, somewhat, man. Well, you gonna do better today? Yeah, man, I'll do better today. You gonna do better tomorrow? Yeah, man, I'm gonna prepare myself. That means you have a purpose and a cause, and even if you die, you look at yourself as something of a hero. And that means even if there's no daylight at the end of your tunnel, you're gonna get your people that you're responsible for through that tunnel, through the fire and flames, and kill off the fire-breathing Gila monsters that's setting fire to the place so you can be a hero. And I get people coming up to me 30 years later, 25 years later, 29 years later and shake my hand. I just went into a business. And it ain't all black folk that get jacked up. This guy was a older white guy, looked to me like that. He was so happy to see me coming in there. So I was trying to buy a spa to replace one that had just seen its last ghost. And he was giving me all these discounts. I said, hey, he said, you saved my life. This white guy, what? He said, you gave me 12 years for a drug thing, but after you sentenced me, you brought me back out after court had adjourned to talk to me about I could do better than what I was doing, and I needed to focus. Now I own this place and two more like them. Thank you for saving my life. So, I mean, and he said, what you did was you gave me purpose and cause. In other words, there was a meaning for my existence instead of just randomly putting up with it. And I have found that that works. The recidivism rate for the 2 terms I was in as a state criminal court judge was over 80%. In my courtroom, I dropped it down to 18%, and it was falling when I retired. That's because you have to give people a purpose. You have to play dad and mom, grandparent, and you have to give them discipline and focus. You have to show them how to do it because they don't understand it. It's like I went in to see Bad Boys 4 at one of the local theaters where a lot of black folk go in. It was ridiculous. You couldn't hear the movie because everybody is loud talking to the movie. They left food on the ground, dead hot dogs and candy bars and nachos and popcorn, didn't pick anything up, and it was ridiculous. I went to another show. There were some black folk there, but they were quiet. They were orderly. They picked up the trash. There were a couple of spills in the theater, but that was about it. And everybody heard the movie. Nobody laughed inappropriately or giggled or had the loud talk. Who cares? You see that? Honey, I hear you. Will you shut up so we can hear the movie? You know, so it's like we have to do what everybody else does. You watch a samurai movie, the Japanese warriors, they bow. Abarigato. You know, Lord Bullington, is this to your satisfaction, sir, or do you need redress? Sir Wilberforce, I find that I've had my satisfaction here. Nothing else is necessary. These guys are swinging battle axes in armor. You have Native Americans counting coup out there on the plains. See, what happens to our honor, our way of looking at stuff, and we go around acting like we have lost our minds. You know, men deal with manly auto self defense. Men deal with protecting, providing, and serving. We don't sit there and pimp women. If you are a man, you provide for them. You don't sit there and beat on them, you protect them. You are supposed to have sense enough to try and associate with sensible women who can exercise their license as your woman to give you sound advisement. And it goes on the other side too. Do we do that? No. See, we've got to start learning stuff, and we used to. This stuff was not black back when. You didn't see this kind of garbage. So, what happened over a 50-year period? I know there was racism back then. I mean, the first time I can really say there was a firm consequence, I was 5 years old. I'm riding along coming from Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. My mother had been librarian there for a season, and she and my father were coming back. He was taking some teaching credential courses, and we passed one of these sundown towns where you're not supposed to be around after sundown because we were trying to get an early start. You didn't travel in the South during the day. These roads were just 2 lanes. There were no barriers or runoffs on the side of the road. They were dark, but you didn't travel during the day because it wasn't safe. So we went by one of these places, and they took 3 shots at the car. My mother had handed me a small Coke bottle she wanted me to hold while she was fishing in the glove compartment. I had it on my knee. Bullet went through the left passenger door in the back, went through, shattered the bottle on my knee, and went out the other side of the car. I was excited because war, my old man had been in World War II, and I'm going, Dad, they're shooting. I was excited. My mother didn't blow her cool. She said, son, get out on the floor. This isn't safe. So I obeyed. I was obedient. 2 more bullet holes went in the car, went through the trunk. We had to get them repaired. Couldn't travel during the daylight. Yeah, it gets rough. I mean, I remember being outside of Disneyland. I was a senior in college. And this was in the late 1960s, working for some professors, and me and some other people had to run to a lab. It was in an alley. We couldn't find it. So a cop turned his lights on and said, oh, shit. So when he pulled us over, gentlemen, are you lost? I said, well, yeah. He said, I noticed you were driving a state vehicle. Are you trying to find a lab? I said, yeah. How is the driver? He said, well, I'll tell you what the problem is. You got to go down 2 streets. There's a light, make a left, etc., etc. Where you want is in an alley. Everybody can't find, nobody can find it. He said, now, I tell you what, it's winter. Said, it's 4:45. It'll be dark by 5:30. Now, young gentlemen, when it gets dark, it won't be gentlemen, it'll be nigger. Now, do you understand what I'm saying? Finish your business quickly and get the hell out of here. Hey, that's right outside Disneyland's parking lot.
Well,
You know,
Judge Joe Brown, I did go over my time. But not to cut you off, but I'm way over my time. I have the call-in show after this tonight, and I still have, just FYI, I got 3 other stories to cover. But I just wanted to say, thank you so much for your time. And where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
well, I'm sorry for going over, but being free is a full-time thing. I devote a lifetime to it. You can find me on X at Judge Joe Brown TV. And you can see right behind me, I sell barbecue sauce. You can go to the website, Judge Joe Brown Barbecue, JJB Barbecue, BBQ, JJBBBQ.com, and order the stuff. We have powder seasonings, chicken links, hot, mild, smoked, raw, beef links, Beyond Meat links. total vegan stuff. We have all kinds of products. And if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can order the stuff on Amazon. They usually take about 2 days to do the shipping, and it's free. So 4th of July is coming up. Get you some, and I guarantee you money back. It'll be the best you've ever had. And we're also expanding into wine of various types, and we have collaborated with a sister who has a distillery, so we're doing bourbon as well. So check it out, and that's at Judge Joe Brown TV. And you can catch me on Monday and Thursday with The Real Dana. That's on YouTube and also on X. You can look that up. And on Tuesday, in a few minutes, we've got X Space that'll usually go on for 4 or 5 hours. And please be polite because most of the mics are open. And on Friday, there's the Judge Joe Brown Show with Valerie Denise, and you can call in. The number is 929-477-1167. And for the last hour, all lines are open, but please be polite to each other so it doesn't become a farce. And a lot of good information is exchanged. So check it out. Be free. Being free is dangerous. Be willing to make the sacrifice to be free. Don't let anything hold you back. It belongs to you, but you have to seize it.
All right. Thank you so much, Judge Joe Brown.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. We're going to go through some of the comments. Forgot I had that tea there. We're going to go through some of the comments. That was an interesting conversation. Oh, man. Interesting conversation. I don't even want to look at the comments. I don't want to look at the comments, but actually we have to. Let's go to we'll go ahead and do the super chats, and then we'll go through the thumbnail, shout out patrons, and keep going on. We will do call in tonight after the show, so don't miss that. There's a lot to discuss. Some of you mentioned Julian Assange earlier. Just FYI, I did cover that earlier today. I didn't go live today, but I recorded the Julian Assange story and I premiered that earlier this afternoon. All right. Thank you, Patrick. Judge Joe Brown is what we call a real one. What's up, Sparky? Thank you. Happy Sabby love. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. Just want you to know you're my favorite girl. Thank you for this one. Great guest with some heavy duty info. Man, the comments in the chat are wild. Thank you for this as well, Sparky. VP Nixon counted Hawaii's alternate electors in January 1961, despite they being for his opponent, JFK. Pence could have done the same in January 2021. Thank you, Dawn. Salute to Judge Joe Brown. Thank you for speaking truth over political babaroonery. Thanks, Marvin. Thanks, Sabby. Great stream. You can do it. Be strong. Thanks, Joan. It's scary to think that someone like Judge Brown was determining the punishment of people with so much hate and bigotry in his heart. Sad. I'm going to try to get Judge Joe Brown to come around on that. Because again, I don't think that's what we should be focusing on. We shouldn't be focusing on what someone's sexuality is. We should be focusing on the top 1%. The people with the money that are really oppressing a lot of us. Thank you, Dr. I keep wanting to say Dr. Dre when I see your name. Thank you, Dre Harden. Sabby is a beast. She got Judge Joe on here. He sounds crazy, but he often has receipts to back it. Thank you, Sparky. In 1800s England, they weren't supposed to like sex anyway, so it didn't matter if they were gay. If they didn't like sex with the opposite sex, they were told, close your eyes and think of England. Interesting. What's up? Thank you. What's up, Oz? Hey, Sabby, I'm buying you a couple of cocktails after this one. You earned them. By the way, I'm not a Judge Joe kind of boomer for better or worse. Hugs. Thank you. Thank you, Dre. Judge has the history receipts Senator Byrd and Biden were open racist and anti-LGBT and anti-student debt relief for decades. Hashtag amnesia. Thank you, Idris. Yes, we are the sluts of the Democratic Party. Judge is right. Okay. Thank you, Resurrect. When it comes to intersectional groups, BP lose. You mean Black people? Thank you, Miss Mo. 100% Judge Joe Brown. Thank you, Jimmy. Wow, awesome discussion. I would like to see more guests like this where we can easily see the differences in our thinking while still having a civil discussion. No war, but a class war. Yeah, I mean, I like to bring on people with different perspectives. I don't just interview people that feel the same way that I do about things. So thank you for this as well, Dre. Shots fired. Fanny, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Fanny? Michael Jackson. Thank you, Unemployed Scholar. Aren't there reparation commissions in 3 states? There's commissions, but it just, it was a commission. Say there was one, but there hasn't been any, action. So it's like, shout out to Jimmy Doors, a lefty, for gifting 5 Sabby Sabs memberships. So some of you got memberships there. Thank you, Oz. Sabby, do you think the judge may be speaking from a PMC perspective because his net worth is around $25 million, or okie dokie boomer? It could be a little bit of both. I mean, these are the kind of conversations I used to have with my parents, like back in the day. Like I used to try to tell my dad that, like, no, like people are working hard, but this economy just doesn't work for you anymore. And it took a while for my dad to come around and see that. These were discussions we had like maybe 10 years ago I had with my dad, but he sees it. But it took a while. Thank you for this as well, Dre. He's correct. The 60/70 movies were toxic. Today, they planted Meg the Stallion, Cardi B, and Sexy Red. So bad, Biden used them for campaign props. Don't forget, Cardi B supported Bernie, too, in 2020. You guys remember that? Like, she interviewed Bernie and everything. Thank you, Patrick. Joe ain't lying. Thanks, Marvin. Sabby, ask Judge about George Floyd his opinion. I'm sorry I didn't see this earlier. Sorry about that. Thank you, Sparky. Superfly soundtrack was a terrific album, though. Thanks, Unemployed Scholar. After the U.S. dropped the bomb on Japan, the U.S. gave subsidies to Japan to rebuild, and they've been tied to the U.S. ever since. And thank you, Dre. Sabby, I owe you a beer. You held it down even when it wasn't comfortable. Judge Joe is uncut. Thank you, Janine. Whole time Sabby was putting vodka in that cup of tea on the low during the interview with Joe. No vodka there. Thank you, Mahiri. You should get Judy and Joe on at the same time. Judge Judy does interviews. And thank you, Roger. Later for that, get him to come around on reparations. We can talk about that tonight on Call In, Roger. Because I think what Judge Joe Brown said about, again, legally, what can we do for reparations? I think what he said there, that was important. And I think I do need to clip that, at least that part of the discussion, because people need to hear what he said about that, about what can we do legally. That's not me trying to be against anything for any haters out there, because I support reparations. But I also want to see what is the solution, what's the pathway forward. So I think that was important to see. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you so much for holding it down around here. Thank you. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. Don't forget about the Sabbies. Just keep on moving on. Keep on moving on. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker. I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Christopher Hughes. That's the second Christopher this week. Fern Henley and Natalie Williams. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Doing the damn thing. All right. And what else are we going to discuss, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, shoot, I forgot about the thumbnail. Do, 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 do. Do you guys ever remember there was this cartoon when I was growing up and it was called Doug? Do you guys remember Doug? Do, 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 do. He had a friend named Skeeter. All right, let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail and you can see what else we're going to discuss tonight. Interesting topics. These stories shouldn't be too long, you guys. So I should get everybody out of here probably a decent time. Like I said, they shouldn't be too long. All right, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, of course, Judge Joe Brown was here. He had a lot to say. A lot to say. We're also going to discuss AOC and Bernie Sanders rally attacked. We'll get into that. And honestly, I wonder if those polls have closed now in New York, in Jamal Bowman's district. Maybe we can check that, Eric, by the time around. I don't know if those polls are still open or not. We're also going to discuss Van Jones is smearing the LA protests. We'll get into that. And last but not least, I don't know if you guys heard about this. Donald Trump is flipping on immigration. Dun, dun, dun. I kid you not. Wait for that one. But let's go ahead and get into the first story tonight. If you did not know, there was a pro-Palestinian protest in Los Angeles the other day. Now, let me tell you what this protest was about. The people there that were protesting, they were protesting outside of a synagogue. And the reason why they were protesting is because there was another real estate event that was happening at a synagogue to sell homes in the West Bank. And I'm telling you this up front because mainstream media is omitting that from this conversation when they discuss that they are disgusted about the protest. Let's go ahead and get into this first clip here. I want to show you. I made a comment here and I said LAPD sits back and allows Zionists to beat pro-Palestinian protesters. This is part of the reason why we need to defund the police. They're corrupt, just like our politicians. Remember, cops support supremacy. What about the black cop? We'll get into this. You're going to see this. Black cops are blue first. I've been saying this for years. I still stand by it. And everyone got to understand that because you can learn this too if you watch the movie Boys in the Hood, where John Singleton talked about his experience. Boys in the Hood was kind of like his experience that he had growing up in that area, right? So these are protesters here, and the pro-Palestinian protesters are being attacked by Zionists. The police are there. Watch this.
Do something to work. No, you do something. I'm trying to leave the area.
So, as you can see, the police are right there. This gentleman here with the long hair is telling the police, he said, why don't you do something? Obviously, you see that I'm being attacked by this gentleman over here, and the police are just standing there. Now, why is that happening? That is happening because, again, you have to remember which side the police are on. Everybody understand this. The police are not on the side of the pro-Palestinian protesters, just like the police were not on the side of the protesters during the civil rights movement. They are on the side of the establishment. They're on the side of the mayor. Now, the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, obviously she spoke out in support of the synagogue, in support of Israel. So that is the same side that the police are on. Never forget this. The mayor can actually fire police officers. Never forget that. Now, I know some people have pointed this out. There's a black police officer right there. Why isn't he doing anything? Because he is still a cop and he is blue first and he is on the side of the establishment. Never forget that. Let's continue on.
We are not going to lie down. We're never going to do something. Come on, finally. was it? Come on.
So again, who is the aggressor? Now, how many times have we seen this? So the pro-Palestinian protesters are being smeared as, anti-Semitic and all these other things and violent. But there have been a number of videos where you see that the Zionist protesters are the aggressor. There have been a number of videos that show this, but that is not who the police want to arrest.
Why aren't you guys protecting her? Why aren't you guys protecting her? Leave the area! Stay right here, little bitch! Come back, little bitch! Come get out of here! Let's go!
And that's another reason why I continue to tell you that the police are worthless. Another reason, again, in that video, as you'll notice, did the police officers prevent crime? Did they stop crime? No. They don't really protect you unless you're rich. If you're rich, they'll look out for you. Now, I had to explain that to you because the White House is taking the side of the pro-Zionist protesters. Listen to this. The White House condemns Palestine supporters in LA for protesting a Jewish real estate event selling homes in the West Bank, yet ignores the fact that the event itself is illegal by both domestic and international law. And that's coming from President Biden here. I'm appalled by the scenes outside the Adas Torah synagogue in Los Angeles. Intimidating Jewish congregants is dangerous, unconscionable, anti-Semitic, and un-American. Americans have a right to peaceful protest, but blocking access to a house of worship and engaging in violence is never acceptable. So again, very conveniently, he omits that what they were protesting is another real estate event of them selling homes in the West Bank, which is against the law domestically and internationally. So he leaves that out. Karen Bass is omitting that as well.
Earlier today, we were protesting outside of a real estate event in Beverly Hills that was selling homes in Anglo neighborhoods in Palestine. There was heavy police presence. They were clearly on the side of the Zionists, even being brought water by some of them and giving them fist bumps. The counter-protesters were very violent. They were clearly the agitators in the situation. So I was punched twice today. The first time was by a police officer who ran up behind me and punched me in the kidney and yelled, "Move." There was no kind of warning to it. It just came up and happened. And the second time was I was heading through the protest and a Zionist punched me in the back of my head. Yeah. So I saw protesters that were being spit at, and there was a woman who was hit with an egg on her hijab. The Zionists were overwhelmingly targeting women. They were using a lot of sexist language and even pushing, shoving, and throwing things at us.
Does that sound familiar? Overwhelmingly attacking the women?
The police were using excessive force. There was a lot of pushing, shoving, punching from the police. They also seemed to be overwhelmingly targeting women that were holding the line. Pro-Palestinian protesters were just outside this event. They were chanting, they were being peaceful, and they were viciously attacked by Zionists and police.
So do you see what's happening here? This is why it's important that you see the other side of the story. This is why that is important. So we can go on to the next image here, because this is what I want you to see. This is what's happening there. Real estate in Israel, the mega event of the year, is coming to North America. LA Valley, Thursday, June 20th. You see this? And then there was LA Pico, Sunday, June 23rd. So these were events, again, come and meet representatives of housing projects in all the best Anglo neighborhoods in Israel. Get the most updated info from experts so that you can make your move. Once again, they are selling homes in the West Bank. So nobody is trying to stop Israel from doing what they're doing. Nobody is trying to stop them. That was happening here in the United States. That's not happening over there in Israel. This event took place right here in the U.S. and the president omits that information. Mayor Karen Bass omits that information. And of course, right here on CNN, you're going to see these commentators, and you're going to see Van Jones also omit that information. Let's go ahead and get into this. Van Jones should be ashamed of himself.
President Biden is condemning Sunday's violent street protests between Los Angeles pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel counter demonstrators. Protest organizers say they were targeting a synagogue where an Israel real estate event was taking place. Biden said he's appalled by what he saw. He said, quote, intimidating Jewish congregants is unconscionable, anti-Semitic, and un-American.
CNN obtained this video appearing to show two men wrestling on the ground as others kick them. The violence prompted LA's mayor to beef up security at houses of worship around the city. Let's discuss with CNN senior political commentator and former Obama administration official Van Jones. Van, great to see you. I'm curious to get your reaction to these scenes playing out, not just in Los Angeles, but we've seen similar ones across the country.
Well, look, this is unacceptable. As a father who's actually trying to raise my children in Los Angeles, I want to just applaud Mayor Bass, Governor Newsom, and President Biden for speaking up about this. Listen, if you don't like what's happening in Gaza, it's your right to protest. That's not a problem. But you protest a policy. You don't protest a people. When you protest a policy, you go to City Hall and you protest. You go to the Israeli consulate peacefully, you protest. Maybe you go to your elected representative, you protest. You don't bum rush a Jewish neighborhood and run up on a synagogue.
So again, pay close attention to what he's doing here. Notice he's leaving out the information that I just gave you. This is why independent media is so important.
That's not protesting a policy, that's protesting a people. And that is across any line in America, and it has to be called out. And you have to also understand the context here. This is a neighborhood that's already been traumatized. Not just October 7th, which traumatized all Jewish communities, but that neighborhood in particular. Last year, in February, not one, but two Jewish men, Orthodox Jewish men, were gunned down, were shot in two back-to-back hate crimes. So you're dealing with a community that's already traumatized, they're already fearful, and then you go and you do something like this. I have no problem with people protesting policy. You cannot protest a people. That is not a protest, that's a pogrom, and that has to stop.
So again, they weren't protesting a people, they were protesting a real estate event that was taking place at that synagogue. So Van Jones is leaving that information out, and so is CNN, and I'm pretty sure they're doing it on purpose. This is why I cannot stand mainstream media. But let's get back to this point of being traumatized, can we? Because, you know, it's really interesting how they have no problem identifying certain communities as dealing with trauma, when there are communities in this country that have been traumatized for decades, fam, not since a year ago. But you never see that same type of passion. You never see them come forward. You don't see the mayor, the governor, the president, other world leaders coming together and say, we must help these people. We must help this community. You don't see it. And Van Jones is a tool. He's a tool. I'm going to show you what he used to be before he decided to take the money. And you'll see how they get activists to sell out. So Van Jones is a tool. Van Jones, as long as he sits there and nods his head and he's pro-Israel and he's pro-establishment, every now and then they'll let him throw in a couple of progressive lines here and there. But the reality is, at the end of the day, Van Jones is establishment tool. That's why he's allowed to be there.
Let's talk about the policy. Let's talk about how the Biden administration, how the president's handling the policy, Van. How do you see it? Where does he need to improve on this?
Well, listen, I think that the president is in a tough position because the base of the party is very concerned about these images that we keep seeing from Gaza, and he wants to take a strong stand on behalf of human rights for everybody. That's Joe Biden. At the same time, I think it's a little bit naive for some people to think that if Israel would suddenly just stop doing what it's doing, that rainbows and bunnies and sunshine would break out over the Middle East and it would all be fine. The hostages have to be returned. If you can call for a ceasefire on both sides. Hamas is still firing its rockets. They still have hostages kidnapped. So this is a complex issue, but here's what's not complicated. Politics can be complicated. Geopolitics can be really complicated. How you treat your neighbors, how you treat people in your community is not complicated. You don't run up. I haven't seen any Jewish people running up on mosques with.
Let me pause here. So do you see what's happening, right? Right. So this is what Van Jones is paid to do. So now it went from the videos that I showed you of the peaceful protests to you don't go and run up on these people in their neighborhood. I didn't see anybody running up on anybody in the neighborhood. I didn't see any of the pro-Palestinian protesters running up on people in that neighborhood. But I did see Zionist protesters running up on the Palestinian people while the police stood right there and did nothing and let them get attacked. What a mess.
Israeli flags. If they did that, I'd be denouncing that too. There are certain things you don't do. It is a red line. If you want to be a part of a protest and they say, we're going to go to a Jewish community center, we're going to go to a mosque, we're going to go to a Jewish restaurant. That's not a protest. That's a pogrom. That's an anti-Jewish bigoted act. If you want to be a part of a protest, let's go to a mosque. Let's go and harass the Muslims. That's not a protest. So we've got to get clear in our country what is a fair protest about policy, you can agree or disagree, and what's going after people, human beings, terrifying moms, grandmas, children who are trying to be a part of a neighborhood. The Jewish neighborhoods in LA are well known. Nobody is confused where they are. So if you show up there wearing a keffiyeh, you show up there with your face covered, you show up there chanting river to the sea, that would be just like a white person running up with a Confederate flag in Harlem. You're not.
Pause. Now he is trying to compare a keffiyeh to the Confederate flag. Does anybody see the problem with this? Number one, they don't have the same history or the same meaning. Once again, this is mainstream media trying to condemn a keffiyeh. And last time I checked, Confederate flags aren't condemned. I lived in the South. And every time I go back south to visit my family, there are lots of Confederate flags. So this is Van Jones and Team Blue calling for more censorship and calling for more suppression of speech. Don't think this is anything different. That is exactly what is happening. So you mean to tell me under this administration, under these so-called progressive, Van Jones claims to be so-called progressive or whatever, these are the same people that are now trying to silence people. These are the same people telling you what you can say, what you can't say. And I said it before again, you ain't got to agree with what people say. But the thing is, if you say you're a free speech absolutist, that means people can say whatever they want. That doesn't mean they won't have consequence, but that means they can say whatever they want. Now a keffiyeh is a problem. Where did that come from? That came from the ADL. Never forget that Jonathan Greenblatt was on Morning Joe and he said the keffiyeh was a problem. It was threatening. Now they're trying to tell you what you can and cannot wear. This is 2024, fam. 2024. They're trying to send us back to like the 50s. This isn't happening under Donald Trump's administration. This is happening under Joe Biden's administration. Both parties want to censor you. Both parties want to tell you what you can and cannot wear. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So he compared a keffiyeh, which is a scarf worn by Palestinian people, people who are oppressed and occupied. He compared that to the Confederate flag. The white Confederates are not oppressed. They're not occupied. What is Van Jones talking about? Then what was really the kicker is he said it at the end. He said, that's like bringing a Confederate flag to Harlem. Have you been to Harlem recently, Van Jones? Because the last time I went to Harlem, it was hella gentrified. Hella gentrified. People just say stuff. Just say anything. And if people haven't been there, you don't even know. That is the embarrassment, or one of the embarrassments of the week. Comparing a keffiyeh to a Confederate flag.
Trying to start a conversation. You're trying to start a fight. Stop doing that. Don't do that. We don't want more violence. We don't want more fear. We don't want more terrified people. We've got to be able to come together as a country. If either side had an easy answer, it'd have been solved. I'm less concerned about the politicians now. I'm concerned about the people in my community in Los Angeles moving in a direction that is more and more dangerous, more and more scary, more and more destructive. The Jewish community does not need to have people doing those types of things. It's not helping anybody in Palestine, but it's making America a much less safe place for everybody.
Oh, now it's in Palestine. I thought Palestine didn't exist, according to you guys over at CNN and MSNBC, and said there was no such place. So it's all over the place. It's horrible. This is a guy who got paid very well and sold out. And I'll show you what Van Jones used to say. I'll show you who Van Jones used to be, because this was Van Jones in 1993, back when he had dreads, back when he was so-called activist, back when he was saying the establishment is a problem. This is who Van Jones used to be. Here's an oldie, but a goodie.
Now, if students can do that in 1960, if students can do that in 1970, if students can do that in 1985 and 86, in 1993, when we have the United States government building a death camp, a concentration camp for black people who have done nothing wrong but get sick and want justice. That's all they've done wrong. If we can't close that death camp, if this generation cannot prevent another Japanese American internment in our lifetime, we should all get haircuts and go get regular jobs and give it up. Now, if students can do that in 1960, if students can do that in 1970, if students can do that in 1985 and 86, in 1993, when we have the United States government building a death camp, a concentration camp for black people who have done nothing wrong but get sick and want justice. That's all they've done wrong. If we can't close that death camp, if this generation cannot prevent another Japanese American internment in our lifetime, we should all get haircuts and go get regular jobs and give it up.
And that's exactly what he did. He decided to get a haircut and get a regular job and give it up. That was Van Jones in 1993. So I don't know if he was one of those activists or pretend to be activists is trying to infiltrate a movement, which we do get those, or if he really was a legitimate activist and somebody came up to him with some money and said, hey, you can make a lot more money. You have a great voice if you decide to come over to the woods this way. They target activist community people too. They target those people. Corporations will target people in the activist community that have a powerful voice and get them to sell out like that. So that's what happened to Van Jones. So now you want to criticize people who are fighting for Palestinian liberation. You want to criticize those people. You want to call those people, a problem and say that the keffiyeh is an issue and that's like the Confederate flag and all this kind of stuff. It's embarrassing when you look back on some of these things and you see some of the things that they were saying before and what they're saying now. Anytime Jeff Bezos is willing to give someone millions of dollars, that's a big sign. That's a big sign to people that Van Jones sold out. Big sign. You don't see Jeff Bezos just walking up to some random activist and saying, hey, I want to give you all this money. I want to give you all this, yada, yada. No, they give it to someone that's going to do their bidding. That's how it works. We have results, Eric. Let me go to these comments real quick, and then I'll get that real quick. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. In general, police are there to protect the elite. Sheriffs are elected, so are a little more likely to protect and serve the people than the police. Interesting. Thank you, Aspen Fallen. Van Jones equals we have Mark Lamont Hill at home. Damn. We got numbers? Okay. It looks like some of the results are coming in from New York. Let's go ahead and pull this in here, and then I'll get to the next story. I just want to see where we're at right now. This is New York district results. I think we need to go down to Bowman's right here. So right now, I'm just going to highlight it so you guys can see. You guys see the highlighted blue? Okay. Right now, Jamal Bowman is losing 43.5% to Latimer. It's 36% in. We'll check it again towards the end of the show. All right. Interesting. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. If you are new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Something crazy happened. And I never thought I would see this. And we need to ask, why is this happening? Donald Trump appeared on the All In podcast. If you guys are not familiar with this podcast, this is, I think it's like 4 or 5 billionaires. David Sachs is one of the commentators on this podcast. It's like him and his tech bros. And they brought on pretty big name guests. I mean, this podcast really blew up pretty quickly because, again, like David Sachs is a billionaire. So it's not like they did not have the resources to do what they needed to do. But Donald Trump did appear on here. And the the section that I want to focus on is the part about immigration. Because believe it or not, according to this interview, Donald Trump has flipped on immigration. And I'm really curious to see how Donald Trump supporters are going to feel about this. And number 2, do you believe he's being honest about this, or you just feel he's just saying what they want to hear? Let's get into this part here.
I know you're running out of time here, but we haven't had a chance for you to speak to the border situation yet. So I want to give you a chance to address that, because that's always been really one of your main issues since 2016. You wanted to build a wall. The Democrats did everything they could to thwart that. You built the wall, but then Biden left a bunch of holes in it and then sold off the parts for scrap metal. And now we've had and repealed your executive orders. So I want to give you a chance to speak to that. But one piece I want to just add in as a follow-up question is, a lot of tech CEOs say, if we fix the border, can we get more H-1Bs for tech workers? So can you address that as well as what's going on at the border?
Yes, so we built hundreds of miles of wall, David, as you know, and we're very proud of it. We did it as per specification by the Border Patrol. They wanted exactly the wall that we did, with the climb paddle on top, with steel, concrete, and then rebar, and all of the things. And they wanted to have vision through it, clearly through it. And because I thought about concrete plank, frankly, going up 40 or 50 feet, and they didn't like that. They wanted to have vision through, and I understood that too. I sort of disagreed with it, but that's okay. We actually brought climbers in, Mount Everest climbers to climb, and we built a very hard wall to climb. It's a very effective wall. And we built hundreds of miles, and then we're going to add quite a bit at the very end. And we bought about 200 additional miles, and it was ready to be put up. Could have been put up in 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And areas that were rough areas that were people coming in, because as you build the wall, they go in different areas, right? They go further out. It was so effective. It was so effective. Mexico gave us a lot of troops for free because of a certain negotiation that I had with them. You heard that. But it was so effective, the wall. But Biden, they didn't want to put up those slats that were going up routinely by us. That means you had gaps. You had, as an example, you had gates in certain area that we put up. We were going to put up big, powerful gates that we could open, and you could let equipment through, et cetera, if you needed it. And they got rid of everything. They sold it for 5 cents on the dollar, much of it, 5 cents on the dollar. I said, I can't believe it. And that's the first time that I said they're serious. They actually want open borders. They want an open border. Nobody could believe it. I couldn't believe it because I never believed they wanted an open border, because who would be stupid enough to want an open border? Look what's happened with an open border.
He said open border like what, 4 or 5 times. I just want to remind everyone that Joe Biden actually continued building onto Trump's border wall. So when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the border, both parties, they lie about this. Both parties are not 100% honest about how they're handling this situation.
I was very proud of that. We had the safest border in the history of our country, and now we have the worst border in the history of the world. We had a safe border. I had a remain in Mexico policy. Catch and release in Mexico, not in the United States. Everything was so good. But the remain in Mexico was a big deal. Not easy to get, but it was a big deal. They were in Tijuana, hundreds of thousands of people. They had to be approved to come into our country. And now you look at what's happened. We've been overrun. It's an invasion of our country by people. Many people come out of jails and prisons. They come out of mental institutions, insane asylums, and we have terrorists coming into our country at a level that we've never seen before. It's a very sad.
I never understood why the wall was so controversial. You know, every country needs to have a border, and a wall is a really good way to enforce a border. I never understood why they were so animated about stopping you from building the wall after you ran on that issue in 2016. They held you up for years with litigation. And then, like you said, they wouldn't just finish the little pieces of it, and they left big holes in it. And I think you're right. The only conclusion is they want an open border. I mean, how else do you explain it?
Let me pause here for a second, because there's this focus on the wall. And what I think is often left out is that walls don't keep people out. People find other ways to get in. We've talked about the airports before on this show. When people talk about immigration and they talk about who is a citizen and a legal immigration, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people, and I know it has changed, I would say over the past year, but a lot of people during Trump's administration, a lot of the people that did not have legal immigration status, a lot of those people were people that overstayed their visas, that came into the United States via airplane, not through the Mexico border. So I've tried to explain this to people so many times, is that walls don't keep people out. People will find a way to get in. Because ask people that have lived in countries where they've had a wall. Some of you may remember when East Berlin and West Berlin were separated by a big giant wall. People still found ways to get through. So there's that. There's a lot of money spent on something that people are going to find a way around, as if a wall is going to prevent everybody from coming. It doesn't. It doesn't. There are other ways to get into the country.
Want to destroy our country. You know, the fact is, it's incredible. The big mistake I made, I should have said, I will not build a wall. We do not want a wall. And that wall would have gone up in 15 minutes.
The more important point, I think, Mr. President, is we need high-skilled workers in this country.
Yes.
We need to recruit the best and brightest from the world. Every time we get somebody super intelligent from India or Europe, any country, that's
3 of us
one
are
less,
immigrants, sir.
Yeah, and 3 of the 4 here are immigrants, the ones without the ties. And we can get these great people into our country.
Pause. This gentleman here, when he is speaking about highly skilled workers, I want you to understand who they are speaking to and who they are speaking for. These are the tech bros. Okay, so David Sachs and his buddies, they're tech bros. The Silicon Valley dudes, that's what they are. So when he says highly skilled workers, and he said, I would get workers from India and stuff, that's because in the tech industry, a lot of times they are trying to recruit workers that are internationals. That is not a secret for those who live in tech spaces, right? So I live in the Boston area, Massachusetts. Boston is number 2 with startups after Silicon Valley. So we have the most startups after Silicon Valley. There's a lot of tech companies here. Part of that has to do with MIT. So a lot of these tech companies, they typically want to hire internationals for those jobs. I kid you not. If you go, you can go into any of these organizations and you see it. You see it, right? So when he says we need highly skilled workers, he's speaking for himself, like literally for himself. Him and David Sachs and all of them, they're speaking for the tech industry. Don't forget that. Let me let it continue.
And that's a loss for our adversaries and our competitors, and it's a gain for us. But I've never heard you talk about this. Can you please promise us you will give us more ability to import the best and brightest around the world to America?
I do promise, but I happen to agree. That's why I promise. Otherwise, I wouldn't promise. Let me just tell you that it's so sad when we lose people from Harvard, MIT, from the greatest schools and lesser schools that are phenomenal schools also. And what I wanted to do, and I would have done this, but then we had to solve the COVID problem because that came in and, sort of dominated for a little while, as you perhaps know. But what I want to do and what I will do is you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically as part of your diploma a green card.
Pause. This is the flip. Now, see, I was working in higher ed during Trump's administration. I remember when the HB1 visa changed under his administration. And I remember a lot of my students having difficulty finding jobs in Boston or even in the Boston area because of the policy that was put in place under his administration. So a lot of those students that were internationals had to go back home. And it wasn't that they couldn't get a job because they weren't smart. They're not intelligent enough. They weren't highly skilled. It was because of the policy that was put in place under Trump's administration, which I'll read to you directly from his administration's website, that change. So now he's saying something different. Let me let him continue.
Be able to stay in this country. And that includes junior colleges too. Anybody graduates from a college, you go in there for 2 years or 4 years. If you graduate or you get a doctorate degree from a college, you should be able to stay in this country. And you know more stories than I do, but I know of stories where people graduated from a top college or from a college and they desperately wanted to stay here. They had a plan for a company, a concept, and they can't. They go back to India, they go back to China, they do the same basic company in those places, and they become multi-billionaires employing thousands and thousands of people, and it could have been done here. And a bigger example is you need a pool of people to work for your companies. You have great companies, and they have to be smart people. Not everybody can be less than smart. You need brilliant people. And we force the brilliant people, the people that graduate from college, the people that are number one in their class from the best colleges, you have to be able to recruit these people and keep the people.
But you were the reason why they could not keep and retain those people. We'll come back to the video in just a second. I want to show you what happened under his administration because I don't want people to forget about this just in case people forgot. Because I had working at MIT, working at BU, a lot of the students are international students. So I had students from China, from Korea, from India. Great students, excellent grades, highly skilled, as they're saying in that video, but could not get jobs here because this happened under Trump's administration. See, people forget. The Trump administration is taking action to tighten foreign worker visa requirements and protect American workers. And we can go right down to this part here. It says the Trump administration announced 2 interim final rules to dramatically improve the H-1B work visa program. Go on here. DHS is tightening standards to require that foreign workers show specialized merit to establish their eligibility. DHS is also taking action to rein in shadow third-party employers who use the HB1 program to displace American workers and to reduce the validity period for H-1Bs used by these shadow employers, which will ensure more frequent vetting for compliance with H-1B program requirements. Let's go down to this part right about here. Putting American workers first. President Trump is committed to making sure American workers are not disadvantaged by foreign labor. Goes on here. President Trump knows that H-1B visas should only be reserved for specialized talent that helps support a strong economy. Here's the problem we ran into, though. what was happening when students were trying to get those jobs. And these are companies that like recruit at these schools all the time, whether it's MIT or BU, it was the same employers that would come to these schools, right? So they were used to recruiting these students. All of a sudden, students that had excellent grades, that had the merit, had internships, did everything they needed to do. And even some of those that are coming from the master degree programs, whereas before they would have been able to get a job at those companies were taking some of these students maybe to the first, the second round of interviews and not letting them make it to the final round of interviews, because what was happening is a lot of those companies, particularly some of those tech companies, they said, well, wait a minute, if we have an American applicant, we have to put them first. So what happened was a lot of those international students that had the skills that David Sachs and his bros are looking for did not get those job opportunities because this was put in place. I talked to these students one-on-one in my office, one-on-one, and I watched them get rejected after rejection after rejection after rejection, even for entry-level positions. It got to the point where I had a couple of students where they took jobs that were way below their pay grade just so they can get the work visa and then work their way up in the United States. I had never seen that before. I'd worked in higher ed for over 11 years. So this happened under his administration. Earlier today, I was talking about Julian Assange and all the people who were saying on social media, well, Trump would have pardoned Julian Assange. He could have done that during his presidency. But it was like all of a sudden, all these people forgot that it was under Trump's administration that Julian Assange was kidnapped. All of a sudden, everybody has brain fog. How quickly people forget. Because everybody's looking for a hero. And what you have to understand is that none of these politicians are going to save you. Nobody is coming to save you. I haven't said that on the show in a while. We have to save each other. So it's just how quickly and easily people can forget because they want that hero. So this piece here, President Trump knows that H-1B students' visas, should be reserved for specialized talent that helps support a strong economy. For too long, this program has been misused as an expensive labor program, replacing American jobs in the process. These critical reforms will improve the quality of the H-1B program without changing the annual statutory cap for H-1B visas. The Trump administration is closing loopholes that have allowed employers in the U.S. to replace American workers with low-cost foreign labor. The problem is this was seen in the professional sector as well. So companies like McKinsey, Deloitte, I don't know if everybody knows who these companies are, but these are the companies that will recruit. McKinsey, like the consulting firms, McKinsey, Deloitte, I think BGB, maybe BGB. These companies that were constantly recruiting at those schools that I worked at, it was like all of a sudden, it was like very few job offers coming out because the reality is a lot of the schools, particularly in this area, do have a lot of international students. So there's that. And another thing I want to tell you that some people don't like to hear and don't want to admit, unfortunately, a lot of these jobs, they are looking for particular math and science skills. And you know what I can tell you when I look at math and science skills in the United States is that when you compare the education system to some of the other countries abroad, students in the US are behind. A lot of the students here do not have advanced math and science skills. This is why you don't see as many American students accepted into some of these elite academic institutions that are going into the math and science fields. That's why when you go to some of those schools, you're like, well, why is all the math and science fields all international students? Because they take advanced math and science classes. It's required in their country. It's not required here. It's sad, but it's the reality. And I'm just being raw with you. It's true. We need a lot of help with STEM in this country. So if you want more American, workers to be able to have those jobs in the tech industry, then we're going to have to improve the education system here, particularly when it comes to STEM. We'll go on a little bit more here. So now you see he's changing his mind on this. Let's continue.
It was such a big deal. Somebody graduates at the top of the class. They can't even make a deal with the company because they don't think they're going to be able to stay in the country. That is going to end on day one.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we all wholeheartedly agree with that. Being in the tech industry, we understand the importance of that. They're telling us.
See?
So you have to go to dinner, Mr. President. So thank you so much for spending so much time with us. We really appreciate it.
And then he had to go there. But do you see what I'm saying? So let me point out something else from this podcast that someone may not have told you if you saw this elsewhere. You guys do know that David Sachs over here in the upper right-hand corner, he donated to Donald Trump's campaign. Let me say this again. David Sachs in the upper right-hand corner donated to Donald Trump's campaign. He also donated to, or he held a fundraiser, for Donald Trump. He also held a fundraiser for RFK, and he hosted a fundraiser for Ro Khanna. So I don't know what's happening there. But Dave's all over the place. Dave is just spreading his money out. Dave is spreading his money out like he had a poker table. So you have to know who people are talking to. What did I tell you? Always follow the money. Yeah, Donald Trump is on that podcast, but you need to know also why he probably went on that podcast. It's a big club, fam, and we're not in it. This is what I was trying to tell Judge Joe Brown. Instead of focusing on who someone wants to date or how they want to dress and all that stuff, that's not things we need to really pay attention to. This is what we need to focus to. You got a billionaire club right here on the screen, fam. These are all billionaires. That means they exploit labor. That means they exploit workers. There is no such thing as a self-made billionaire. I've covered that on this show multiple times. So you got one big billionaire club right there. And then you have a presidential candidate on the screen with the billionaires, and the billionaires are asking the president to help their business. Do you see how it becomes personal? They don't do anything for poor and working class people. They help the rich. Billionaires help other billionaires. Follow the money. Let's go to some of the comments here. But we got to get those test scores up. Let me come out of here. We can go to part 2 when you're ready, Eric. We got to get those test scores up in this country. Like it irks my brain. It really irks my brain. We have to teach advanced math and science in this country. We need to stop making it an elective. Shout out to the Crazy Puppet for becoming a Sabby member. Give Crazy Puppet a big whoop whoop. Crazy Puppet. Crazy Puppet. Thank you for the super chat, Unemployed Scholar. U.S. created the border in the first place, and it invaded Mexico to expand it. There you go. Thank you for the super chat. None of your business. Did the Americans get the jobs? Very few. Very few got those jobs. Again, the math and science skills. We can try to do better with that in this country, I think. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Tech bros want to pay a foreign engineer $80K a year instead of paying an American engineer $250K. Also, those math and science skills. I'm just keeping it real. No, Mike. Mike says we dumb. We're not dumb, Mike. We just don't have the advanced skills that a lot of the other schools in other countries have because they make it a requirement. It's not optional. So, for example, when I was in high school, calculus was optional. In some countries, it's not. So, there is that. Oh, Mike. I hope you didn't take it that way, Mike. Well, breaking news as we're going into the final story, and we will do call in after the show tonight, but this is, I guess this is perfect timing. It appears that Eric has just told me that Jamal Bowman has officially lost. Eric said that they just called it. Let's go ahead and bring it up on the screen, and I'll tell you why I think that this happened. It just aligns perfectly with our story tonight. So if you look down here, you'll see it's 58% in District 16, but they've already called it, which typically means. The other areas that are left, they are already saying would go towards Latimer. So Jamal Bowman received 44.9% and Latimer received 55.1% of the vote. Now, it was just perfect timing that this happened the way that it did. But I want to explain to you why I think Jamal Bowman lost. It just fits with the story. AOC and Bernie Sanders were out there campaigning for Jamal Bowman. There was a rally to help bring out the community and increase support for Jamal Bowman, because you guys know that AIPAC has heavily attacked his campaign. Latimer is their guy. So this is their way of getting back at Jamal Bowman for supporting the Palestinian movement, even though at the same time he took money from J Street before. He's taken money from the Israeli lobby before. He's also supported Israel as well. So he tried to walk the fence, and I've said this before, you cannot walk the fence on this issue. The Palestinian people deserve self-determination. You cannot walk the fence on this. Now, here's the problem. The Justice Democrat strategy has immensely failed. Problem is, like, these are people that were supposed to go into the Democratic Party and push back against the establishment. Didn't work out so well. They decided they wanted to be careerists instead. And what you found along the way, instead of them pushing back on the Dem establishment talking points, they decided to try to fit in with Dem party leadership. And that is where they went wrong. So by doing that, they end up riding the fence. And sometimes on really significant issues, whether it's Israel and Gaza, Russia and Ukraine, the railroad workers wanting to go on strike. AOC was just out here campaigning for Joe Biden in Las Vegas before she showed up to Jamal Bowman's rally. Watch this.
This week marks the 2-year anniversary of the catastrophic Dobbs decision. 2 years since 6 conservative justices toppled Roe v. Wade. Since our right to choose was taken from us, and pregnant women and people across the country have had their lives at risk. It's been 2 years since our freedom over our bodies was seized by the most corrupt Supreme Court in American history. And that court itself was appointed by the most corrupt president in American history, Donald Trump. And it is.
Now, you out here fighting for reproductive freedom, right? You guys see fighting for reproductive freedom? You're out here fighting for reproductive freedom, and the people that you're campaigning for are dropping bombs on kids in Gaza. You are out here campaigning for reproductive freedom, and the people that you are promoting are dropping bombs on kids in Gaza. I guess reproductive freedom doesn't matter. Reproduction doesn't matter when it comes to Gaza. The hypocrisy of it all. You are endorsing and supporting President Joe Biden, who is continuing the genocide in Gaza. Then you want to run over here to New York in the Bronx and come out there and tell people to get out here and campaign and help Jamal Bowman. You want to support the genocider on one hand, and you want to support someone fighting for the Palestinian people on the other hand, who also was still trying to be pro-Israel. You can't sit up here and clap 2 hands together in politics, boo. You can't have it that way. You can't have Israel on one side and Gaza on the other side and clapping your hands. They don't even have a 2-state solution. But I remember when people like AOC said she didn't care if she was a one-term politician, but here she is trying to be a careerist. How else do you explain this? I'll let her finish here. Then we'll get to the Bronx.
Precisely because of Donald Trump and his corrupt court that women and girls and pregnant people have less rights today in 2024 than our parents and grandparents did. And we will not stand for that. And Nevada, I will tell you, and I know you already know, that if he wins in November, you better believe Donald Trump and a Republican Congress will pass a national abortion ban.
Has Donald Trump said that? I don't think Donald Trump has said that, though. I don't think I've ever heard, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, guys. I don't think I've heard Donald Trump say he would pass a national abortion ban. I remember him saying leave it up to the states. But they got to run on reproductive rights because they don't have anything else left. You guys see what's happening here? Again, this is what the Joe Biden and the Democrats are planning on running on, is reproductive right while you're killing kids.
Now that alone is enormous reason why it is crucial that we re-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as President and Vice President of the United States.
So that was AOC there in Las Vegas. Now, she was in Las Vegas promoting Joe Biden, the genocider in chief. And then she hopped over to the Bronx and trying to help Jamal Bowman and telling people AIPAC's trying to take down Jamal Bowman. You were just at an event with the largest recipient of AIPAC money from the Democratic Party, and you are promoting and endorsing this man. You were just there promoting the guy who's taken over millions of dollars from the Israeli lobby. Then you hop over to the Bronx and you tell people, help, Jamal Bowman's being taken down by AIPAC. We got to help Jamal. Riding the fence. This is ridiculous.
What's up, everybody? We are just a few days out till the election day, our primary election on Tuesday, June 25th. But the good news is that the polls are open right now, and we are here for our brother, Jamal Bowman. We want to turn out the vote. I don't care if you live in New York 16 and are turning out to vote for him. I don't care if you live outside New York 16. We are texting our friends. We are turning out. We are calling our friends in Tuckahoe, in White Plains, in New Rochelle, in Yonkers, and telling them to vote for Jamal Bowman.
Ceasefire now, y'all. That's what we're doing. Ceasefire now. Let's get it popping. The polls are open today. The polls are open tomorrow. Make sure you get out to vote. Election day is Tuesday. Let's go. We need record turnout all across the district, especially in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Co-op City, and Edenwald. Let's get it popping. Let's change the world. It's the many versus the money. We're going to win. Let's go, baby.
We're going to win. We're going to take on AIPAC, and we're going to kick some Wall Street ass. So let's go.
Stop the bombs.
How are you going to take on AIPAC when you were just endorsing the guy who takes the most money from AIPAC? How are you going to fight AIPAC on one hand and shake AIPAC's other hand? How do you do this? How do you tango with AIPAC and then kick AIPAC out your house? You can't have it both ways. Once you're in bed with that organization, you are in bed with that organization. There is no, I'm not a part of you, but I'm a part of you and I'm still going to support you. That's not how it works. Now I want to take you back. I want to take you back to a time when Jamal Bowman's constituents tried to talk to him multiple times. Because you see, when we get to the crowd that they had at that rally, that embarrassing small ass crowd, I want you to understand why that crowd was as small as it was. Because Jamal Bowman got comfortable and he didn't want to listen to his own constituents when they tried to talk to him about what was happening in Israel and about the way that he voted. This video was last year. This was either March or February. This is before October 7th. They had issues with the way that he was voting. Back then, he didn't want to listen to them. Listen to what he said.
Right now, it's not live. Listen to what I'm saying. You just want to say what you want to say. Listen to what I'm saying, please. Oh, are you going to listen? You asked me a question, I answered, and now I'm giving you some feedback, some advice. If you want it or not, you don't have to take it. Okay? I'm in Congress every day. Okay? I see the power of the other side. We don't have that power. When I hold on, when I make a statement, when I take a stand by myself, me and the squad, there's no one else in Congress with us, and there's not many people outside with us. Are the squad really? Hold on, stop.
So what he's saying here is he said when he's in Congress, he is by himself. There's no one but him in the squad. We don't have any power, but they did have power. They had enough people to have a narrow majority, which is a part of the DSA handbook where they actually mention when you have a narrow majority to the point where it can actually affect legislation, you are supposed to use that narrow majority. They didn't do it. They wouldn't do it during Force the Vote. They wouldn't do it during voting for the Iron Dome. They wouldn't do it for funding the Capitol Police. I can come up with a number of them, fam. They didn't want to do it for the railroad workers strike. That was them turning their backs on the workers. There's a number of examples where they had a narrow majority and they chose not to do it because they were listening to Democrat leadership. Now he gets frustrated with the people who confront him. But Jamal Bowman lost tonight. And if Jamal Bowman would have been listening to his constituents, and maybe if they saw him actually fighting, maybe Jamal Bowman would still have his seat.
Looking to be super critical and listen to what I'm saying. We got to organize the people here to speak out on the issue and push elected officials here to speak out on the issue. And that's what we have to do.
We need to make a stand. What did you vote that you did on that?
Because I'm trying to be strategic and play the long game.
He's trying to be strategic and play the long game. How'd that work out tonight?
Human rights.
Listen.
The people that are being massacred by Israel cannot wait.
Everyone heard that? She said the people who are being massacred by Israel cannot wait. Again, this took place last year. I got to check the date on this. It's February or March of last year. This was way before October 7th, which again, as I've been trying to tell people, they were killing Palestinians before October 7th. Jamal Bowman wanted to vote a certain type of way, but then he didn't like when his constituents would confront him about the way that he voted on these issues when he knew as a so-called progressive, he was not supposed to vote for those things. Let's continue.
Do you even know what I've done since I've been in Congress on this issue? Do you know anything I've done since I've been in Congress? What have I done? What have I done since I've been in Congress on this issue? What have I done since I've been in Congress on this issue specifically? I'm here. Y'all don't know. So you look for what I didn't do, but you don't look for what I've done. What's the minimum standard?
Voting no on
do you know Betty McCollum's bill that she introduced in 2020?
Doesn't matter. Were you incapable of?
Come on, man. All right.
So the Iron Dome, let's think about this. This is a very good example that she brought up. That was back then. Voting no on the Iron Dome. Remember how they split with that? Remember AOC voted president and then she started crying all these tears or whatever. But that was the minimum. That's what she was telling him. She said, Jamal, voting no on the Iron Dome was the minimum. Look at where we are now. This was before October 7th. He voted for the Iron Dome. So you can't, seriously, as a person who is a part of, at that time, he was still a part of DSA. You are not supposed to vote yes for the Iron Dome. The DSA called this out after the voting happened. You were not supposed to vote for pro-Israel policies. You were supposed to vote for policies that would help the Palestinian people. This is word for word verbatim in the DSA handbook. And every time they voted in a way that was against what the DSA said in their handbook, the DSA would issue a statement. Every time. That was the bare minimum.
Why were you willing to vote yes on the Iron Dome?
That's one vote and one time.
That is a huge vote.
What about the other stuff that's been done? What about the other stuff that's been done and what I've said?
Does that affect?
You don't even know. You can't even point to my record.
I can point to the record that I'm talking about.
Yeah, but you point on one thing. I can give you 5 other things I've done.
That's a crucial thing.
I can give you 5 other things I've actually done.
Are you going to stand against removing all Israel aid?
Yeah, just go. Look at me.
I'll assume that's a no.
Even then, didn't want to vote against removing Israel aid. See, and there was another time when he was approached by Roger Meadows, friend of the show. This was during the time, again, this is all around the same time frame. This is during the time when Joe Biden was threatening to privatize Medicare. So listen to this. Listen to the way that he speaks to Roger. Watch this.
He started this program and he's putting Medicare on the verge of Wall Street. I want to know what you guys are doing about it. So it sounds like to me this is the first time you're hearing about it.
So if you can't really hear, I'm going to tell you what he said because I've already listened to this a couple times. So what he's saying is that Joe Biden is trying to privatize Medicare. So Roger said, yes, it is him. Okay, yeah, I thought so. Roger in the house. He's saying Joe Biden is trying to privatize Medicare. And he's asking Jamal Bowman, I just want to know if you're going to do something about it, because it seems like this is the first time you're hearing about it based on Jamal Bowman's reaction. Now, let me fast forward a little bit here because you don't need to hear my commentary from back then.
Don't approach me with this energy, man.
See, we doing something. Sorry, right here. Because he got really mad. He got mad at Roger. Yeah. Look. Watch.
You're doing something.
Yeah, I gotta stay. What are you doing?
Don't worry about it, man. Don't approach me with this energy, man.
See? So that was when Jamal Bowman said, don't approach me with this energy. So this is Roger Meadows here on the left. Let me fast forward a little bit more so you can see more.
Approach me with like respect. So I haven't heard of this.
He said, approach me with respect. This is how you do it. Say, hey, here, I'll take it back. Listen.
Bring to your attention, in case you don't know, there's this thing called and it's something you should look at because I'm very concerned about that. Do it that way. Don't approach me trying to back me in the corner and you got somebody recording me.
You should be backed into a corner at this point because you guys have been ignoring independent media up the wazoo. You guys have been doing everything that you can to avoid having these conversations, the tough conversations, taking tough questions. This was the only way that you could kind of get their attention because they were avoiding obviously independent media, but also their constituents.
Okay, which looks to be doing the same kind of stuff.
Now, someone explained this to me. He said that he hasn't heard of it. He heard of Medicare Advantage, which seems to be doing a similar thing. Who's in office? Roger Meadows or Jamal Bowman? Why is it that we know about this, but the people who are there don't know about it? And this isn't new, because I'm about to show you an article that was written about this over a year ago. So you mean to tell me Jacobin, the Lever, me, all the rest of us who have reported on this, that Joe Biden's trying to privatize Medicare, you mean to tell me all of us knew, but you sitting there in Congress and you didn't know? Let's go on.
So the CPC just had a meeting about it this week, and I'm working with CPC members to figure out what we want to do.
All right, you should definitely look into this issue.
I definitely will.
It's putting Medicare getting it over the Wall Street. It's the same crap that Obama tried to do with Social Security. CPI.
Yes. Okay. No, for sure.
So you can't hear the whole thing, but I just basically tell you here. So Roger was trying to ask him, what are you going to do about this? Joe Biden is trying to privatize Medicare, and it's not like that was the first time Roger has tried to get in touch with one of the members of the squad. So the thing is, they make it almost impossible for the grassroots base, the people who actually went out there and helped them canvas and all that kind of stuff. Then it was like, once they got in, they make it almost impossible for you to be able to reach them. Someone said, Skylar said, Jamal Bowman has done independent media like Mark Lamont Hill show. Yeah, when was that? Recent? When he was running for re-election? Because you haven't seen any of these people. Look, they ain't got to come on this show. They didn't even know me back then. I didn't have a show back then. But you ain't seen none of these people on Bad Faith podcast. AOC, Jamal Bowman, Ilhan Omar. I think Rashida Tlaib may have gone on to Katie's at one point. But for the most part, they avoided independent media. Yeah, he came around to Mark Lamont's Hill show because he needed help trying to get reelected. Because it was that bad for him. And as you see, he just lost. So, but they avoided us. They actively avoided the left independent media space. And I know a number of people that were reaching out to them and they said, the people in their office told me like, no, they're not going to do independent media. There's a lot that this goes back to. Now, Old Crow brought up a really good point. Shout out to Old Crow. He said, brother, holler at us when you are independent and away from the compromised duopoly. Half of your peers take AIPAC money, and that's why they aren't coming to your support. One of the high-level leaders of the part, Hillary, endorsed your opponent because Israel said so. Brother, no, we will not support you if you are going to support clowns like Biden and Jeffries. It is no Democratic or Republican party. It's people that do work for Israel. These are all Democratic leaders, but you tell us about Republicans, it's irrelevant. Both parties are compromised. So that's a really good point that Old Crow brought up there. And this is the people, right? So George Latimer, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. And when he was campaigning, he kept saying, well, the Republicans are coming after me and the AIPAC's sicking the Republicans on me. These people are Democrats, fam. These are Democrats that are taking money from AIPAC. So that's why I pushed back on this. And I said, until you call out Hillary Clinton, until you call out your buddy Hakeem Jeffries, even though y'all were trying to start some hip hop day, priorities. Until you call out Chuck Schumer, I ain't trying to hear it, fam. I ain't trying to hear it. AIPAC is not exclusive to the Republican Party. And then you were endorsing Joe Biden. I will imagine that all of them, probably except for AOC, I think AOC is winning hers, are going to struggle. I think Cori Bush will struggle. I think Ilhan Omar will struggle. Jamal Bowman just lost. We'll have to wait for those two races too. I think they're all going to struggle. Exactly. Thank you, JB. The call is coming from inside the house. It's just, and it's, again, some of this has to do with, I feel like Justice Democrats just kind of let them go. It's like they got into office. There was no mentorship from what I understand from Justice Democrats after all that. And then they just got swallowed up. This part right here from Ajamu said, this is sad. And I want to show you this crowd because this is sad. Look at how small this crowd is for this rally. Now, this was for AOC and Bernie Sanders, not just AOC. Some of us remember the crowd that AOC and Bernie Sanders spoke to in 2020. Or was that 2019? It might have been the year before. Maybe it was 20. No, I think it was 2020. In 2020, over 20,000 people. How you go from that to this? Where are all the people? They're in the Bronx. This was in the Bronx. People faded away because you guys, they lost hope. They lost hope in you. Then you got Bernie Sanders being a whole ass clown. Then he gets up on the stage and he says this. I told you they're trying to both sides this Israel-Gaza issue. Listen.
Guts to take on the fossil fuel industry. Transform our energy system and save this planet for our kids and our grandchildren. And Jamal also understands that what's going on in Gaza today is totally unacceptable. Israel had the right to defend itself against the terrorist attack.
You hear this? This is Bernie Sanders.
But it does not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people. Guts to take on the fossil fuel industry. Transform our energy system and save this planet for our kids and our grandchildren. And Jamal also understands that what's going on in Gaza today is totally unacceptable. Israel had the right to defend itself against the terrorist attack, but it does not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people.
Afeni sums this up very well. Thank you, Afeni. Afeni said, I'm embarrassed I ever supported Bernie Sanders. Listen to this.
Bernie Sanders, AOC, step to the front, step to the front, step to the front. So in the year of our Lord, 2024, okay, this past weekend, I heard that y'all were at a rally where Bernie said Israel has a right to defend itself, okay? And I just really want to ask Bernie, the 21,000 children that the UN reported missing because of this genocide, is that self-defense? Or is the 355 rounds that were fired into a car that had a family, including a 6-year-old girl named Henry Job, is that self-defense? Is it self-defense when the imaginary state takes our tax dollars, the bombs that were made by our tax dollars, and drops them on tents? No, for real. Is it self-defense when the imaginary state and America poisons aid packages that are being given to Palestinians? Is that self-defense? Y'all are participating in genocide denial. Y'all are participating in genocide denial. AOC, Bernie Sanders, Jamal Bowman, you are participating in genocide denial. Stop playing in our faces, okay? Oh yeah, and by the way, that Project 2025 shit, wrap that shit up. America was founded on genocide and fascism. This has never been a democratic country. This has never been a democratic country. A Republican president has not won the popular vote in over 40 years, but yet we have Republican presidents. This country has never been a democracy. And let's be so super real, the only reason why y'all care right now is because the fascism is going to affect white people. Because for black and brown people, for Palestinian people, we've been living in a fascist country. The way this country operates outside of our borders, it's been given fascism. So I do not care. I'm not voting for Genocide Joe. I don't care if AOC, Bernie Sanders, I don't care who the fuck tells me to do it. Hell no. And you shouldn't either. Period.
So it is official that Jamal Bowman has lost his re-election. And I warned people that this day was coming for certain members of the squad. And everybody said I was being a Debbie Downer. Sorry, but I was telling you the truth. Jamal Bowman voted against the railroad workers. Does everybody remember this? I covered that on the show. Jamal Bowman voted for the Iron Dome. Jamal Bowman voted for funding the Nazis in Ukraine. I can't. Yes, I understand that his district did change. Totally get that. But I also know that if Jamal Bowman would not have voted in such a way, and he took a lot of tremendous heat against people, he got pushback from DSA when he tried to go to Israel. There were a number of things that he did that were just not in line with DSA or what it means to be a progressive. If Jamal Bowman would have pushed back the way that he was supposed to as a member of DSA, Jamal Bowman still would have had the grassroots behind him, whether his district changed or not. Jamal Bowman did not have the grassroots behind him anymore. You saw the small ass crowd. The grassroots left. And some of the members of the squad, when they got into Congress, they became a little bit too comfortable. AOC has become, her ego is so damn big now. You can't even talk to this woman without her running away from you if you got a question and you're her constituents. They became very smug. They got these big egos and they became almost impossible to even talk to. They weren't one of us anymore. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Big money sucks. But until you get corporate money out of electoral politics, this is always going to be a problem. I've said this for 2.5 years now? But if you have a large grassroots base, you can fight back against it. But if you lose the grassroots, you will lose. It's a mess. But it happens. This is why you can't sleep on us. You forgot about the grassroots. You forgot about those of us that canvassed for you guys. Those of us that made phone calls, knocked on all these doors just to get you in there in the first place. You didn't want to talk to us. You forgot about the people that were your ride or die. You guys start hanging out with Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, got really cozy and all that kind of stuff. You were supposed to fight back against those people. And I want to address this here from Skylar. But Sabby, they didn't really have the numbers. The Dems had a narrow majority, but not the squad. The squad had the numbers to force a vote for Medicare for all. They had the numbers. They had the numbers not to let the Capitol Police funding legislation pass. They split on that. They split on the Iron Dome. They had the numbers for those things, and they chose not to do it because Nancy Pelosi told them not to. We can't continue. You can't make excuses for them. They heard from all of us. Where was Jamal Bowman when he was contacted by activists for the Medicare for All marches? Where was Jamal Bowman? None of these people wanted to hear from us. All these people ran on Medicare for All. When we were having marches all across this country, where was Jamal Bowman? Cori Bush showed up in DC and said she didn't like what we were doing. What the hell was that? You ran on these things. So you cannot abandon the grassroots and expect them to still come out and defend you. And people have demands. Within our lifetime, that's the name of this group. Solidarity with Palestine can no longer be a hollow commitment. Politicians need to meet the bare minimum if they claim to be allies to our movement. Rescind endorsement of Biden. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Defend Palestinian right to resist. Those are their demands. And you know what? None of the members of the squad meet those demands. Jamal Bowman doesn't meet those demands. Jamal lost tonight. You can't abandon the grassroots ever. Can't abandon the grassroots. One more reminder for people who didn't see this earlier again, we cannot stream the debate on Thursday. CNN apparently privately owns the debate. They have exclusive rights to it, but it's free to the public. So only mainstream media channels that they gave approval to stream the debate can stream the debate on Thursday. The rest of us cannot. Sagar and Jetty actually posted that and the email and all the information on Twitter. If you follow Sagar, you'll see this. He was the one that alerted everybody. So there's no fair use this time, Tom. This isn't the same debate. This is privately owned by CNN. Even Tim Pool did a video talking about it. So it's different. This is not one of the congressional debates. This is their own private thing. It's really messed up. It sucks. but I won't be streaming that. We will do call in tonight. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. Eric, I think we have some super chats to read, and I'll be back. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How's everybody doing on this Tuesday? I'm Eric T. Red. I'm usually in the background, but sometimes I jump up in here into the foreground to give Sabrina a little break. We will be transitioning into what we used to call in. The call-in app is long gone, but now we do it with Zoom, as we call it our Zoom Hangout, Sabby After Hours. I don't know if we have an official name for it yet, but yeah, there's this whole thing with the debate and the so CNN is like allowing other major media corporations to run it, but they're not allowing any independent media orgs, not even like Breaking Points and TYT can't even run it unless CNN says so. And somebody brought up the whole fair use idea. And yeah, I mean, if we were in a fair society, right, the fair use argument would win out. I mean, it's really even enshrined in the Constitution. This concept that if something is in the public interest and in fair use, and it ties into the First Amendment of free speech, that it should be fair game for the citizens to cover it and talk about it and show it and make use of it. And for one thing, one problem is CNN is like taking ownership of it. That shouldn't win the day, but that's part of it now. And the other part of it, of course, is at this point, big money and billionaires, they make the rules, right? They're running the show. And so that's the rules in the show that they're making. Now, let's, but yeah, we'll be transitioning to Zoom Hangout. You can tell us what you think. We encourage everybody to jump into that. We'll be giving you the link. Sabrina will be setting up the room, the Zoom Hangout room shortly, and we'll be posting that link information. We encourage everyone to come in and join us. Cameras are optional, on or off. Sometimes Kiva the cat makes an appearance. We'll see. Trying to think of a polite way to put this. Let's try to make it not all dudes doing the call-in too. We'd like to see some women also have a little more participation in who's doing the call-in and the talking. But everyone's welcome. All right, let's look at these chats and super chats that have come in. Thanks for this super chat. Roger saying Goldman, Lattimore, and AOC won as per NBC News. Thanks for that, Roger. Thanks for the super sticker, Jasmine Harrell. Appreciate that. Thanks for the super chat, Sparky. Causing brain drain in other countries hurts their economies. Forcing more illegal immigration to the U.S. from those countries. Yeah, he's tying into that story about with Trump talking to the billionaires and they wanting the labor from other countries, and I mean that's a whole story there. GM said they lost the plot. They lost their base. Talking about the squad and Jamal Bowman losing. Yeah, I mean, part of that whole thing as well is that we have to remember that the base of the Democrats and the Republicans is not us, right? They fake us into thinking we're their base and they want our votes, but what's their real base is the billionaires, the people who actually pay their bills and sign their checks. That's who they're working for. And I think it's important to remember that in all this. Thanks for the super chat, Unemployed Scholar. I caution against looking up to Asian style ultra competitive education. Those who can't handle the pressure break. I read about someone who tried to kill his mother because she pushed her sons too hard academically. Yeah, there's certainly such a thing as pushing those things too hard. Let's see here. We had this one in the queue here from Bryce Smith. Her and Bernie packed Las Vegas venues too. Yeah, there was a cool little meme I saw on Twitter of kind of how it's going. It was how it went and how it's going, and it showed an old picture of a big Bernie rally and these million, tens of thousands of people spread out, and then they show the picture of this latest rally, and it's like empty grass, how it's going, and people are onto them. The real trick is then, what's the next step, right? It's great that people are on to the squad and no longer supporting them, but then what's step two? And that's some of the stuff we need to be talking about, I think. Thanks for the super chat, NY Varsity Sports. Sabs, tell Roger I'm in NYC at Keats. All right, maybe NY Varsity Sports, you can come into the Zoom hangout and tell Roger yourself. But thanks for the super chat. Thanks for this one, Tates. Bernie is the liberal Zionist. Thanks for this generous super chat. Leprechaun Alley, who says, Nancy threatened them with being primaried, knowing they were going to be primaried anyway. They're gullible as hell. AOC and Jamal are the only ones who may get a career. Yeah, I mean, I actually have a little bit of a disagreement with that in a way, in that I think the Justice Democrat thing, the way these elections are going for the so-called squad, I think this is the system, operating as it is intended to for the corporate oligarchy. That's how they want the system to operate. It's narrative. It's a big deal, and the squad and Bernie are the controlled opposition part of the narrative. So this bit of, they get primaried, and they went too far, they didn't go far enough, and all this stuff is really just theater, it's really just game playing. The point of the whole thing, the critical part of the whole thing systemically, is that nothing really changes in the system, right? The billionaires still get wealthier and wealthier. We still have war all over the place. Why do we have war all over the place? Because it's profitable. Every bomb dropped is $1 in the pocket. Is a lot of dollars in the pocket of a billionaire. That's the key insight, in my opinion, to all of this systemically. And until you really get that into your brain and really get that as the through line through all of this, you're going to be confused until you see it that way. It's all about the money and power. Thanks for the super chat, Cynical. We can't stream those other channel. Damn, CNN is poop. Yes, that is certainly true. And thanks for this super chat, Sparky. Does your Boston Dynamic robot have a machine gun mounted on it? Yeah, I mean, that's can be this potential dark future that's coming. You really can't put anything past, the billionaires and the power structure, and sure, they'll use robots on us. I mean, it's, why wouldn't they? But yeah, and in general, I say, apply the MCDS to any of this and all of this. It's about the money and corruption. Jamal Bowman's going to be just fine, right? Jamal Bowman's going to have some big money gig, and he did his role, and don't worry about Jamal. He'll land on his feet.
He'll be fine.
And they're allowed to be in there because they're not a real threat to power. And so then it's up to us to have real precise, concise demands to really get anywhere, and then from there come the real solutions. MCDS. And now we'll be working our way to the Zoom Hangout.
Yeah, so that link is pinned to the top of the chat, guys. All you do is just click on the link and you're in the Zoom room. I'm actually going to start the room. I'm going to open it while I'm on stream just to make sure people can get in. I always do that. Just ask that you mute yourself upon arrival. And the passcode is, I don't think it's asking people for the passcode, but I'll put it here anyway, I guess. Just to be on the safe side, if you want to join. I'm pretty sure there's lots to discuss because it has been a crazy week. Guys, if you haven't seen it, I did do the Julian Assange coverage earlier today, so check that out. Okay, that passcode is 495-915. Save here. Lots to discuss tonight. If you want to talk about Judge Joe Brown, etc., just make sure you mute yourself.
post over to me, I'll mute people too.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And the way it works, if you want to talk when you get into the Zoom room at the very bottom of the screen here, you can just click over to where it says reactions and raise your hand. And that's how I know if you want to speak. Okay, so Eric, let me find you and I'll go ahead and make you the host.
Raising my hand.
So you can, okay, I made you the host. If you can go ahead and start muting people. And that is it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a long night again. Sorry, no debate on Thursday because none of us in independent media are allowed to use CNN's content. Isn't that a doozy? All right, so have a good night, guys. Keep up the fight. Doobie-doo.